react. You whispering my name, thinking I won't be the same. Turn fiction into fact. See what you didn't know, bruises that I'll never show, slipping on your every jab. So tighten up your fist, step into the ring with this. I hope your mama's got your back. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. Just 'cause I took a break, you're making a huge mistake, thinking you can take the throne. Look at you trembling, step into the lion's den. Bet you wish you stayed at home. Begging for mercy underneath your breath when I ain't even sweating yet. My legend's written in the stone, yeah. You're crying danger in defeat is now your only friend. Even your mama's gotta know. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 First round, fifth round, final round. Oh, 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 yeah. First round, fifth round, final round. No, 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 no. First round, you thought you would've knocked me down. Fifth round, bleeding out the side of your mouth. Final round, holding the sound of my name in the crowd. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh. You didn't bust. Oh, 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 oh.
In a world where a host can't even operate his own microphone, a suit costs $400, and nobody knows what time it is, despite the clock that's literally built into the show. One man has the courage to stand up and say, it's in time, not on time.
Photo of you in my mind, on the table under lights. There's no one here but you and I. This neon town is yours and mine. And I said, hey, Carissa,
one of these days, you know. And of course, that's what we had the movie guy saying, the microphone. Yeah. Never gonna get that right, am I? So, yeah, thank you, Titan. No, I just, dear Lord, there's something terribly wrong with it, the audio on this interface. All right, so what was I saying? Yeah, I don't know. It's been a crazy day, a lot going on. Titan had remarked earlier that he's expecting a lot of breaking news to be coming up, and I suspect he's probably right between COVID and all of this stuff. And once again, I think it's going to be a bit like the final days in Watergate, where it's just something new every single time. The Bannon revelations are startling, and we're just finding out more and more. It's just like, yeah, you know, I was involved, but you know, being involved and masterminding are two different things, and it's sounding like, I got it, thank you. And we had Brendan in here for a little bit, but he I don't know what happened. That one actually wasn't my fault. I really like it when other people screw up, because it doesn't really take the focus off me. People are still obviously keenly aware when I get something wrong. But yeah, something is really wrong with the interface on in particular this one. So, in fact, actually, we've got on the 4th, October 4th, we've got a patron hangout. Now, the patron hangouts are it's really, we say it's patron hangout, but it's for any major contributor of the show. So if you've super chatted more than a couple of times, if you are a patron or a subscriber, a member, if you know, even the mods, you know, we'd love to have, you know, you guys are contributors. So anybody who contributes significantly to the show can come up. So we drop the link in the YouTube community page, drop it on the patron page, and we drop it on the supporter page or the supporter channel on the Discord, which the mods have access to. So, and I'm hoping 𝐂𝐴NDering and or Joe can also make the 4th. I think that'll be fun to have them along for that. But one of the things that we've done is we're kind of in the middle of a major overhaul of the interface. So, you know, as you can tell, we've got these wooden frames and a lot of really cool stuff that I like. I don't want to get too bogged down in it, because it's one of those things. Hey, it's nice, but content is king, and so, you know, we need to be getting good guests and having good interviews, and I need to be keeping more abreast of the news. But at any rate, it's still so in the process of doing that, I think we're going to have to figure out something. The software we use is, oh dear Lord, it's wonky as hell, and every time I think I get it, there's new layers of confounding, and it seems to have reverted some of the settings, which it does. You'd think this is pro software. You'd think they'd get this right, but it reverts settings all the time. And I remember, it's funny because we've had other producers, and I remember all of the producers used this. We started out on OBS and slobs, and I think what else? A couple of OBS, slobs, those kinds of things. And they're great software, and once you get those down, they really are pretty bulletproof, especially OBS. But you know, people started using this, and what you can do with this stuff is great. But oh dear Lord, it's just wonky as. And every time I think I got it, it's like it reverts settings. So every time I get good settings that I know are going to work, poof, it goes back. We'll figure that out. At any rate, if anybody has anything they want to discuss, you can drop it into the live chat. Like I said, the number, just because the number causes a lot of lag right now, the number actually goes through Skype and then through a call center, and bouncing it from a phone to the call center to us here on Skype, and then bouncing it back just created a lot of lag, and one person on a phone call brought everybody else down. So we have disabled that for now. I have a theory as to how I can speed that up dramatically, but until I can implement that, no phone calls. And besides, who are these random strangers calling me anyway? I don't. Maybe I shouldn't put the entire phone number out there, I suppose, if I don't want to be called. And it's the abortion one. A lot of people are pissed about Pelosi passing this bill, which of course she didn't pass. It was the Democrats passed it, but Pelosi really got behind it and got this done. And they're pissed because of all the political shenanigans and yada yada yada. And you really shouldn't be, legislating this and let SCOTUS decide. But here's the thing: they're the ones who are pulling the shenanigans. I mean, in Texas, everybody knows that this isn't a bill. The bill in Texas, I forget what it's called, something like Protect Our Women Act. And the idea was to protect women by making it so they couldn't have an abortion past a safe period. But they declared safe periods so conservatively, and they have so many other restrictions that it just eliminates abortions. And everybody knows that's what it's there to fucking do. So it seems to me that if you're going to pull shenanigans like that, and I guess a lot of them are pissed too, that there's actually 3 people who have publicly announced that they have violated the law in Texas. And there's the doctor that we talked about on our last broadcast. And everybody's pissed because nobody actually wants to sue them. And a couple people have. 3 people have sued the doctor. But a lot of the legislators are pissed because they're like, well, we don't want to sue people who are deliberately breaking the law just to get sued. We want this to be so I had read a piece about the animosity from the legislature against people who are deliberately breaking the law just to get sued. And I'm like, you guys are the ones who deliberately made the law just to stop abortion in violation of a couple of laws yourself, by the way. So it's just the level of hypocrisy is starting to wear. I like what Porpoise said, and this is a phrase I had never heard before. I couldn't agree more. Pelosi had said this. Pelosi had said, wow. No, Porpoise had said this. Don't tell Sinister I confused her with Pelosi. She may not mind, but at any rate, the Porpoise had called it compassion fatigue, I think it was, or empathy. I don't know. And I've been on a couple other streams and I sort of brought it up. And the general consensus is really what I would hope it would be, which is, hey, we can't be assholes, and we can't sit there and say, hey, we're glad when. And on In Time, we've done several streams like this, and it may be time to do another one. But it's the first time I feel myself truly slipping. Where we did the stream. We had on Christopher Mowdy and his wife. And his wife was very much for like, oh yeah, Trump should die from COVID. That would just be hilarious. and Mowdy and I were both like, look, the principle has to be we want everybody to survive this. Even the assholes. That's what makes us different. That's why our values matter. But I'm reaching the point with COVID, and it's funny because even Biden had said our patience is not infinite, which suggests to me he's getting ticked off because even in saying that, you are admitting that in your view you have the right to legislate this and you have the right to force others into your position. Actually, the only reason our patience only lasts so long. What that means is we're going to, at some point, move to the next step where you do as you're told. That's an odd... yeah, Porpoise for Congress. I will vote for you know what? I have run campaigns before. I've never actually been a campaign manager. I was on the short list for a campaign manager of a congressional campaign in Massachusetts, but that's a long story. But at any rate, I will volunteer for Porpoise's campaign manager if she would like me to do that, and if not, I will volunteer in any capacity that would help, even if it is in just saying I've never heard of her. If that would help, if she doesn't want to be associated with In Time in any way whatsoever, we do have a secret sponsor, right? So In Time has a sponsor whose product is so good that they're actually paying us money not to associate with it in any way whatsoever. So I can't really talk about it, but I'm happy to do that, or be campaign anything. At any rate, so 2024, my robotic vacuum cleaner will be my running mate. Well, honestly, if you just ran the vacuum cleaner instead of you, it would still be a better president than Donald Trump. So, but I just found what Biden said was interesting because there's a tacit assumption or implication there that we have the right to push the other side around. I think we actually do have that right far more. And I'd watched that. I'd like to get Nate Brody on. It's a little difficult because one of the things I really like about Nate, and Nate does this really well, is he always tells his audience that they are the judge. Sorry, they're the jury. He presents both sides. And sometimes you can tell there's one side maybe he likes better than the other, but he presents both sides. So it's very hard to tell which side he's on. So, he did a video covering the precedent for a president declaring a mandated vaccine that everybody in this country has to take. And there was more precedent than I thought. And there was enough precedent that it looked to me like he could do it. And in fact, he's already setting it up, which is what Nate said. If I get a chance, if somebody else comes in and I get a moment free, I will put a link to Nate's video on it was a spectacular video. Nate does great work. He's been he's been really helpful to this channel. He was super chatted us early on and was always very supportive. So I really appreciate him. But it's not BS when I say that. I was always I love being on stream with him. You can tell when you see it. I enjoy it. So hopefully we'll get a chance to get him back on. But the problem is, it's seeing where he's going to land on this. I don't know. He's very good at presenting both sides. I'd like to see it happen. I think he probably can do it. Nate did offer some significant evidence as to why the stumbling blocks. It looks like that's where he's headed. But nonetheless, you end up with this President Roomba. Well, it would be Vice President Roomba. Excuse me. Well, hold on. The only way it could be President Roomba was if somebody invoked the 25th on purpose, which you'd even suggest that Titan is a little shocking, to be quite honest. I thought you had more respect for porpoise. I could be wrong, but okay. Porpoise for 25. Come on. But President Roomba is funny. So I think that the fatigue is setting in for me, where I'm like, good news, bad news. The good news is when you don't get a vaccine, the people you're hurting most are yourself and the people you care about. So I suppose on some level that's the cornerstone of freedom. If I want to eat cheeseburgers all day, I'm hurting myself more than anything, but I can do that. But obviously, and there's nobody, I'm preaching to the choir on this really isn't quite the same thing, because if you get it, you become a weapon. You have been weaponized. And as a weapon, whether you intend to or not, you can hurt other people. There's very little that you can do about that. Okay, hold 1 second, please. I need to correct a sound issue. All right, there we go. Hopefully that will take care of it. So, apologize for that. So, you've been probably the correct course of action. Yeah, well. So we've got people who have been turned into weapons, and they're walking down the street. And when I say that, I don't mean to compare this into gun control or anything like that, because at least with a gun, if somebody shoots somebody else, there's consequences for the shooter. With a gun, you have to, for the most part, accidents do happen, but for the most part, the biggest reason I'm for gun control is because somebody could go take that gun and go out and deliberately shoot and murder a whole bunch of people. Titan dropped it, so thank you very much, Titan. Probably steal it right from him when I put it into the description, but thank you, Titan. So when with a gun, at least, everybody knows it's a weapon, and everybody knows what the purpose of it is, and it can go off accidentally, but those aren't really the things we're not mostly worried about. The accidental shooting, it's a concern, but that's not the biggie. If somebody's got COVID, they have become a weapon. They may not even know they're a weapon. They may not know who they're killing. They may not kill anybody. On a long enough line, they'll kill somebody, because if you infect 10 people, heck, if you infect 3 people, and then they infect 3 people, and then they infect 3 people, eventually you will be responsible for somebody's death. But we don't trace that, and even if we did, we don't hold you criminally responsible for that. So you're a weapon, but not at all like a gun. In some ways, far, far more dangerous than a gun, which is why more people are dying of this than guns right now, by a lot. So I've just reached a point where these people are killing a lot of people. In a few cases, they've certainly killed people I know. They've killed people everybody knows. I don't think anybody, I could be wrong, I haven't done a sample, but I think everybody here must know somebody who's died of it. How close you were, I don't know, but how many? That's a good question, but it's no longer 6 degrees of separation. It's 1 degree for basically everybody. It's very much like 9/11. All of us know somebody who was profoundly affected by 9/11. Most of us know somebody who had at least a very close encounter, who could have or should have been on one of those planes, who was in New York at the time. My wife was in New York, and she, her best friend and roommate went out and said, I'm going to go visit the World Trade Center today. So, oh, great, have a good time. Friends were in from out of town, and he's going to show them around. Went off to go visit the World Trade Center. World Trade Center comes down. She was sure he was dead. Obviously, nobody can survive that. Turned out they changed their mind at the last minute and went to the Statue of Liberty. At any rate, so you've got this thing that's and if anybody would like to call in, by the way, the line is open. It's Skype. We're using Skype right now. It's just the easiest way. If you can't connect through Skype and want to connect through some other means, let me know. But I think right now we're just Skype is the easiest, and it's got police lag free. So yeah, live at intimeshow.com. Come on in, connect. So like I said, we had Brendan earlier here, but and he and I were talking for a few minutes, and then he disconnected. So I'm 99% sure it was his fault. I'll blame him, man. It was his fault. Okay. Anyway, anyone wants to call in, but these guys, I'm just reaching a point where, it's very hard to stick to my own values and principles. Where I say, you know what, it doesn't matter. We're all human. We all make mistakes. And the other thing is, I don't have any. I studied philosophy because I love that shit, and I love thinking about things, and I really love logic, and I love how very precise logic really is. And you can tell some things with immense levels of precision. You can speak with immense levels of precision, which it turns out I'm usually reasonably good at. So that's a great idea. That should be policy. So, I love philosophy, but one of the things that has always interested me is, in terms of ethics, in terms of morality, how to deal with situations where the consequences are wildly disproportionate from the crime. But so the biggie, when I used to teach mock trial, when I was a coach for the mock trial team, we'd just start on the basics of what is the basic principle of law. There were 4 kids, and somebody in here is probably going to remember where I want to say Utah, but so we do have Sinister is coming in. So let me go. So we should have. I think I. Oh, yep. There's Sinister. How are you? Let me get you up in the window, but I don't know. Can you hear me? I can see you. Okay, I'll give her a minute to get that sorted out. So 4 kids, high school kids, decided as a prank they were going to pull stop signs all across the state. It was either Texas or Utah. It was one of them. And so they decided they're going to go pull all these stop signs. Well, the next day, it was a 4-way intersection. Actually, well, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't 4-way. It was a stop in either direction, and 1 lane of traffic through. A family of 4 went through it. The truck did not know it was a 4-way stop, because someone had taken out the stop sign, run it, and they slam into the family of 4, killing all of them. So these kids were tried and convicted and spent a considerable amount of jail time. Well, stealing the stop signs doesn't normally result in that much jail time, and the average kid who does it, which obviously it's extraordinarily serious. And okay, let me quickly let me just get Porpoise on the screen. I don't know if Porpoise, can you hear me? All right, let me get her up here so that at least people are going to start thinking I'm senile and talking to myself if I don't actually get her up. So, okay, she's talking now, but I did not hear her. But let me just see if it's definitely a possibility. It's my end. The sound on this thing has gotten really messed up. Okay, so the NDI input's on. All of these inputs are on. And double check and make sure. Well, Brandon was here a second ago and he could hear me, which strongly suggests that my end here is set up correctly. So we got Porpoise up, and I certainly don't hear her. But like I said, Brendan was connected a short while ago and I could hear him, so I'll give her another minute to... Oh, I heard something for a sec. There you are. Hello.
Testing.
Hey, how are you?
Testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can hear you.
Maybe it's my microphone being weird.
So, hey, Xandring, how are you? So, anyways, the point with these kids, and again, I'd like to, if somebody remembers where this was, but so it was 4 kids, 2 guys, 2 girls that pulled all these stop signs. But the argument that they made was that they didn't pull that stop sign, that they had pulled 6, 7 other stop signs in the area, but they didn't pull that one, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But it brings up the question, okay, I was able to hear you for a minute there, Porpoise, but so
what is wrong with my mic?
I can hear you.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, there you go. Perfect. How are you? Okay. All right. Well, I'll finish this. Brings up the question: what if they hadn't pulled that one? Does it matter? Does it matter whether or not they pulled the exact one that led to the death of 4 people?
My end's set up almost correctly.
All right. Well, I can hear. I'm gonna finish this story real quick, and then you can tell me what you think of this story. Hey, how's it going?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you.
Hold on. Give me just a second. Getting a lot of background noise here. And now I can't hear you at all, so...
Oh, okay. Well, so, let's see. See if I can finish the story about the kids. Well, at this point, everyone may have lost the thread.
I've been able to hear you, it's just I can't.
Okay. So, well, she's actually probably not quite that close. She is a little close to her cam, but that's also... that's just the because that's the one that's designed to hold all the people in all the rooms. If I put her on the other camera, I should be able to see her. I'll move her in a sec. So the question is, does it matter if the kids actually pulled that one stop sign that resulted in they pulled all the others that could have resulted in just as much death? It was luck as to whether or not they did it. And should you change?
I haven't been speaking.
Oh yeah. Hey. Oh, should you change somebody's punishment based on luck?
I'm fine, except for some reason I'm not getting audio through Skype.
Okay, well, we're about to get Xandring in on the call. Oh, I think he was calling for a second, and then I lost him, so wasn't quite fast enough on the draw. So if Xandring gives that another call, I can get him in. So it literally popped up, and just as I was about to press it, done. So, and I'm sure he's going to weigh in on this one. So let's see, the 4 kids. Well, it turned out, when a private investigator about 8 months later, oh, perfect. All right, I'm almost done with the story, and then we'll say hi, and then we'll see if Xandring wants to try again to get in, because I literally, it gives you a quarter of a second. But, so it doesn't matter. It's a circumstance of luck, so why would you change their sentence based on luck? But for some reason, it matters whether or not they pulled that particular sign when any of the signs could have had the same result. And a private investigator found the sign. And he found it 6 months later on the side of the road in the same spot. It had rolled off into one of those drainage ditches that had been there for that whole time, and it had been struck by a pipe. And what had happened was, and he found the truck that struck it. And the truck driver remembered the incident. It was the same night as the kids pulling all the other signs. The truck driver had been driving, and then all of a sudden he was carrying a load of pipes, and a whole bunch of them came off, and one of them struck the sign, knocked it over. He put everything back on his truck again, and just kept driving. The kids were telling the truth. They did not pull that sign. But they're serving a sentence as if they had. Well, is that right? Is that, again, it's only luck.
I'm going to explain this notation.
So, at any rate. All right, well, I'll maybe get back to it. I don't want to. So, Porpoise, how are you?
Oh, sorry, I was looking at... Come on, full screen. Not sure. Come on.
Well, I can put you
Sorry.
in. No worries.
I'm having a little difficulty with Skype's peculiarities.
Yeah, I'm thinking of switching actually to Microsoft Teams, which nobody has, but it lets you connect through a web browser. So as long as the web browser connection is fast and doesn't have lag, I send you the link. You can just connect through the web browser. You don't even need it, and if it's at least as reliable as Skype but easier to use, oh dear Lord! And we actually have it for free. It's already part of the services the InTime already gets. So I'm thinking of doing that, but it just takes a while to do the switch, and I want to finish testing it because I don't want to we don't want to have our first time using it to be live. So we'll get that sorted.
Well, to use Teams for classes and work right now.
Oh, is it any good?
No.
Oh well.
But you're asking a Linux person if a Microsoft product is any good, so.
Oh yeah, I suppose that. Oh well, I've been up to my ears in playing Borderlands 2, and I have
smash the system.
And I was playing. My daughter just found out about Tina's the DLC, Tina's assault on the car. She thought it just came out.
Tina's assault on Dragon Keith.
Yep, she thought it just came out. She's like, we have to play it now. So we sit down, we're playing it, and my character reverted back. I was just like, how'd that happen? Well, I have different accounts on 2 different computers. I have my account on 2 different computers, but my daughter's got an account on that computer, and she plays on that one I play on. But the cloud synced one of my older versions of that character, said, okay, you're no longer in sync with the cloud version, and long story short, had some data loss on it. I was just like, why is the cloud this is the newer version. How does it not know that? And I look, and it's by Microsoft. That's how it doesn't know it. You've heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. To error is human, but to truly foul things up requires a computer. Or a Xandering, who still hasn't called back. So what else are you up to?
Pre-calc homework. Writing Python programs for a data structures and algorithms class.
Sounds fun. I was talking to... Please don't hold this against me. Just please don't. I was talking to Maddox, and he said that, basically scientists have now proven that DNA really is a code in the same sense as a code, and all programmers agree. Now, first of all, I'm a programmer, and I teach programming at the high school level. I'm not a Linux admin. I'm not... I don't have nearly your skills, but I can program Java, C, Basic, Pascal. I do know that 2 of those languages are essentially dead, but don't tell that to the live chat. Let them all think that I can really that this is meaningful. But
Pascal will never die.
Why is that?
I refuse to let Pascal die.
Oh, okay. I learned on Think Pascal, and I actually found a bug in the compiler, which isn't easy to do. But I don't know. So there was a bug in my code, or there appeared to be a bug in my code, and we couldn't fix it, and nobody could figure out what it was. I went to several PhDs, and they're like, "This cannot be a print of your code." I said, "This is," and I managed to reduce it to just two lines, and there has to be a bug in these 2 lines. I'm like, no, that's perfect. Well, it turned out somebody was just like, it's possible. It's a bug in the compiler, and we were able to test it, and sure enough, but. All right, so, hey, how are you? We also now should have Xandering here. Xandering, how you doing?
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, nope. We can. We can hear you. We can hear you just fine.
Absolutely not.
Thank you. Porpoise is very helpful.
As always.
Jared, why can't you just use StreamYards? We can and do on occasion, but there's a number of reasons I don't like StreamYards and don't use it. I mean, honestly, there have been times I've been sitting there going, let's just bite the bullet and do it because it's solid and reliable. We can't use it for overtime. And the reason is because we can't integrate live streams. We can't integrate RMTP. Is that right? Streams. We can't So a lot of what Overtime needs to be able to do to cover breaking news, you cannot do in StreamYards. Some of the stuff that I like doing here, you also can't do. Now, a lot of this is I can't. Even the clock down there on the bottom, your right, actually works. That clock is the real time, and it's an astrological clock, and it turns. We've got our calendar up. We've got the live chat up and all these other things. But you can't do most of that in StreamYards. But on the flip side, StreamYards is bulletproof reliable. So I hold out hope that I can get this to work the way it says it can, but it's a Microsoft product, and nobody has ever succeeded in doing that. Please do not listen to Maya's answer. Maya is biased and mean. So you're not going to let Pascal die, Corpus?
Okay, I've got Lazarus installed on almost every computer in this house.
Now, is that now? I the last time I used Pascal, somebody had attempted to make an object-oriented version of it, which I don't see why you could do. But the last I've heard, no, there is no real accepted object-oriented Pascal out there. Is there one?
Delphi?
Delphi's object. What?
Weren't there like oracles at Delphi?
Well, Borland made Turbo Pascal its successor to compete with Visual Basic was Delphi, and while Borland is no longer around, the Delphi is, and Lazarus is basically the open source version of the free Pascal compiler.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. And I almost was going to start listening to his Andering, and then I realized my mistake, which was I was almost about to start listening to his Andering. So
That's never good.
no, it's not good. What was that? We were talking about
We all know we do serious coding in MIT Scratch. As Randolph Richardson.
Oh, did he say Randolph codes in Scratch?
I don't know if he does or not, but he is in chat now. Hi, Randolph.
Hey there. Okay, well, let me I'm gonna switch this over to we'll switch that over to that. And then now I had a question for Xandring on something. I don't even remember. There was something very specific I wanted to ask him about, and I have completely spaced it. I don't know. Somebody hopefully in the live chat's going to remind me. So is Xandring, do you have any thoughts on any of on either the Bannon stuff? You had said too that you were actually for, I think if I understand you correctly, for a mandate at this point. But Bannon, as it turns out, really orchestrating the 6th and the passing today of the House resolution to make abortion legal as a matter of law.
I think that if people are really wanting to try and get the abortion issue back in front of the Supreme Court, they're doing all the right things.
Yeah, I think, well, and I think it's 3 doctors or 3 people. I don't know if they're all doctors, so I know one of them is a doctor. 3 people have confessed to violating the law in Texas and are in the process of being sued. I guess that the administration in Texas is actually really ticked off. They're like, no, you're not supposed to be breaking it on purpose. We're supposed to be getting people who are trying to have abortions, not people who want to end up in front of the Supreme Court. It's like, well, sorry.
Yeah, people never seem to act exactly the way that you expect them to or want them to.
Well, I mean, the law is a lie and it's disingenuous as fuck anyway, right? I mean, the whole point of the law was to ban abortions without actually banning abortions. So if you're going to do that, then it seems to me that it's perfectly legit to then deliberately violate the law so you can land it in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. I find that amazing that they're having an issue with that, but okay.
Yeah, and when it comes to Steve Bannon, I'm having less and less difficulty believing just about every single conspiracy theory about him. Or I'm less inclined to believe theories about him are actual conspiracy.
So you're more inclined to believe they're accurate, is that?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to believe the story. Something could come out and say Steve Bannon was hiding aliens in his basement and had all of the original blueprints for the Pyramid of Giza. My first instinct at this point is to actually believe that until such time as it's proven incorrect. There's just been so many things that have come out that you would, on the surface, would think, okay, that's got to be a crazy conspiracy theory there, and then it turns out to be, substantiated and true. And so, yeah, I don't put anything past Steve Bannon anymore.
Well, I hear you wouldn't like him when he's angry.
Yeah.
Not Bruce
Oh,
Banner.
that's Bruce Banner. Never
Steve
mind.
Bannon. And by the way, Mr. Atheist, Mr. N Atheist in our live chat, I did see the end of our last show. By the way, I still check the live chat. Just saying. Showed up at the end. He's taking over for Jake 4D on that one. Show up. Hey, did I miss anything? Show's over. Thanks. Oh, dear Lord. So, what about that? Did you hear the kid story? Did either of you hear the story about the 4 kids? So it was 4 kids that were pulling up stop signs. It turned out that there was a truck ran where there should have been a stop sign, ran an intersection, wiped out a family of 4. There was no stop sign. The stop sign had been there the day before. Now it's gone. Kids said, well, wait, that wasn't us. Like, they pulled out 7 or 8 stop signs throughout the state. They went to jail on, I think it was either reckless endangerment or involuntary manslaughter. And about 8 months into their sentence, a detective found that stop sign. And it turned out they hadn't pulled it. It had been knocked over the night before. So when they said they hadn't pulled it, they were telling the truth. So now what do you do? Because, I mean, it's a thorny...
Well, they have evidence to prove that they didn't. They found evidence that they weren't responsible for pulling the stop sign, therefore had no malicious impact on the accident whatsoever, and I don't believe, and their conviction based on that should be overturned.
Well, I agree. I have a hard time. I mean, my sort of view is when they pulled the stop signs, that was always a risk. And the fact that they didn't get to that stop sign, because they would have pulled it if they had gotten to it. They just didn't get to it. They were in other areas. So if they could have, they would have pulled that one, and they wouldn't have thought about it a second thought. And the ones that they did pull could have resulted in a death. So what you're basically doing is saying that, well, it's not the action that we're punishing you for, it's the consequences of that action. And if through no action of your own, it turned out that the consequences were extra bad, you're going to get an extra long sentence. Or if through absolutely no fault of your own, you just happen to get away with it, well, then nothing. I mean, it should have a basically... I don't think they should have gotten that in the first place, despite the fact that they killed people.
I mean, if they have evidence, I mean, they were charged based on the actual accident, correct?
Yes.
That's okay. And if they have evidence that they pulled, other stop signs in other places, well, that's a crime as well. And if they have evidence that can prove that in court, then they should be taken to court and charged with something like reckless endangerment or whatever the fitting charge would be for their jurisdiction. And they could be charged for that. But one of the reasons I think that they went to actual prison was because people died in this particular accident. But, again, they didn't pull that stop sign. They had nothing to do with the accident that occurred and the deaths that happened at that stop sign. And so that should have zero legal bearing upon them whatsoever. It's like telling me that, we arrested this guy who is in legal possession of a firearm, but people say we're going to go murder a bunch of people. Well, we arrest him before he goes and murders a bunch of people. Well, you can't charge him with those murders of people because he didn't commit any of the murders. So, you can't charge any of these kids with any of the consequences of this particular accident because they had nothing to do with it. But if you can prove that they were pulling other stop signs, you can charge them with whatever appropriate crime for pulling a stop sign would be.
Well, yeah, but I think my point is I don't think they should ever have been charged with anything other than that, despite the consequences, because in either case, presumably, when somebody goes to jail, somebody is in court. They're in court for their actions, and it seems to me that their actions could have had the exact same result. The only reason it didn't was because nobody happened to be going down that road at any time, or this or that. Complete luck and circumstances well beyond your control should not affect the sentencing. In this case, it did.
Yeah, but we do this.
Yeah,
but we do this all the time. I mean, for example, hey, God, I'm feeling really grim tonight with all the murders. You murder a woman that you had no idea was pregnant. She may not have even known it was pregnant. Find out, after the autopsy, you find out, oh, she was, 3 weeks pregnant, and now they're being charged as a double homicide. Well, there was no intent to kill a second person in there. Nobody knew the second person was there. It was, we always increase. Well, I shouldn't say we always, but we often increase the penalties for crimes when, the consequences are far greater than they could have been. Especially when somebody dies because of your actions.
I agree that even when the consequences are greater than you necessarily predicted or might otherwise have predicted, but I don't think that random circumstance should play into it. I still struggle very much with the fetus, and I think that in part the trying to have that be a second homicide is much more political than it is. And that's not to say it's without merit, but I think that there are more political factors at play. The reason I say this is because it seems to me, I got onto this from COVID. Everybody who walks around without a mask, without taking any precautions, without the vaccine, is a potential weapon at this point. So they're all a potential weapon, and there's no way to know who you're going to hurt. And if you infect 3 people, and they infect 3 people, and they infect 3 people, well, a long enough timeline, you will kill somebody. So, but we don't trace that. We don't know. So I think it should be treated as you're a weapon, and I think we do have a right to act on it. And I think we have to start finding ways to find people with the severity of you could kill someone.
Then if you're going to do that, then you're going to open up everybody, usually parents, because it's generally children that get chickenpox. So if you don't get the chickenpox vaccine, which they have now, and your child contracts chickenpox, and before they become symptomatic, they pass the chickenpox on to somebody else, well, that family now has legal recourse to sue your parents. If you have, a particularly bad case of, say, H1N1, and you don't realize it, and you go to, there's at any point, any kind of transmissible disease can now be now develop criminal negligence, and you can sue people over that. That's a very dangerous path to go down, because you can hold the same standard to any disease, any virus, even bacteria, and I don't think that you should be able to charge people for a virus. It's like,
yeah.
All right, yes, Porpoise.
Not necessarily. I'm going to disagree there. Also, can we get that little black box underneath my name? Right here.
Okay, yeah, it says yeah, it does. Okay, sorry, let's get rid of that. Yeah. Actually, I'm not even sure how. Yeah, let me deal with that right now.
Because I couldn't get rid of it on Skype either.
Okay, yeah, that's another reason why.
The reason I don't agree with this. Can I be heard?
Yes, you can. Sorry, I just
yes.
The fastest way to do it was to just kill the camera there, but you're still connected.
I don't really know. It's got to be something Skype. I can't figure out how to remove it.
No, Skype's got it. There's another camera. I can put you if I take your image not from. That's the lounge where they can see everybody. I'll put you in a separate camera, and that should be taken care of. But please continue.
But we know one of the things that you can be charged with if you knowingly spread HIV is actually at least 1 point murder, because you knew you were probably going to kill someone if you gave them HIV. So if you deliberately go out and give someone COVID, maybe most people, and I hate to do this because it always gets misapplied by the wrong people, but most people will survive COVID if they get it. But if you go and knowingly spread COVID, you are being malicious, and there should be penalties for that.
I agree with you there. If you knowingly are spreading a disease, just like if you're knowingly spreading say anthrax, because anthrax is a mold spore, fungus spore, I should say. You knowingly spread that, you can be guilty of a crime. Knowingly, I don't think that you can be charged with murder anymore for HIV, but reckless endangerment or attempted, they've lessened it because HIV is now survivable. It's not necessarily a death sentence like it used to be. But yeah, if you knowingly go and spread something that can harm other people, of course, that would be a crime. But just saying because I'm walking around, no apparent symptoms, don't think that I'm sick at all, I feel great, and I'm walking around without it just because I don't have a mask on, and it turns out later that I was in fact infected with COVID, and let's just say they can prove that I actually met with these certain people, and 3 of them got sick with COVID and 1 of them died. Now they're going to charge me on a crime that I have a problem with.
But keep in mind,
you could do that with any disease.
Yes and no, because
there's a difference in intent here.
Well, yeah, but that's sort of my point, though, is it still has to be what's reasonable, right? I mean, there has to be what a parent would reasonably know, what you can reasonably know. By this point, every American must be able to reasonably conclude that this is a dangerous disease and it is killing people. Now, but you also reasonably, if you look at the numbers, it's not reasonable to expect that giving somebody COVID would kill them. I agree, which is why I didn't say would charge them with murder.
Like I said, we're at this sweet point in this disease where it's
I think you can. I think it's known that it's dangerous and that you can charge them with something, and it can be criminal, reckless endangerment, something like that. I don't think you can charge them with murder, and I think, quite frankly, for the same reason that I have some objections to the fact that the kids got that sentence in the first place, because again, the difference between what happened actually was not their action specifically. I don't think if you infect 10 people, infect 10 people, infect 10 people, and the one on the bottom end dies, yeah, you could draw a straight line back, but I don't think that's reasonable. I think what is reasonable is to say that those people got sick because of you, and whether they live or die is all entirely beyond your control, and maybe someone had a weak immune system, that's not your fault. But the reality is you still endangered them. You still should know that this is dangerous. So I'm not saying anybody should be charged with murder, but I'm getting frustrated with the fact that we're entertaining people who are denying reality and who are hurting people. And ultimately they're killing people as well. The only thing you can really charge them with is hurting people, because everything past that, there's no mens rea to commit murder. Nobody's sitting there saying, I'm going to catch COVID and then give it to people. That's a whole different thing. But if you are willfully negligent, I think you have to pay some price for that. I think it has to be criminal at this point. And even if you infect somebody,
like I said,
who dies, well, let me just.
But if you do that,
yeah.
Okay, go ahead, finish.
Well, let's say you infect somebody by accident and they die. I don't think that elevates the crime. I don't think you should now be necessarily convicted of murder because you had no way of knowing it would kill them, because this isn't a 100% lethal, but you had a way of knowing that you might be infected. You had a way of knowing it would definitely get some people sick, and the more you spread around, the more, and eventually you could kill someone. So some form of reckless endangerment, and maybe the first time, no jail time, even if it kills somebody. Again, because I wasn't pleased with the kids' decision the first time when they actually got the extra time. But a second or third time where it's like you're aware that what you're doing is hurting people, I think at some point, I think criminal consequences have to start flowing. I just don't, I'm not talking on the order of you're killing people and spending anything more than 30 days in jail.
Not being charged with murder, but maybe malicious mischief or something like that.
Something, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if you do that for COVID, then you have to do that for pretty much every other disease that could cause damages.
Only if a reasonable person could expect it and knew that was a potential. So at this point, there is nobody. You cannot say that any reasonable person would not realize that this is. There are plenty of unreasonable people in this country, but any reasonable person must know by this point it's dangerous. You know there's reasonable.
Any reasonable person also knows that influenza kills thousands of people. I mean, that's not, that's not unreasonable to know. I mean, that's in the news every year. So I'm just saying that if you're going to open up criminal actions, or the ability to bring criminal charges against somebody for simply walking down the street or walking through a building, not wearing a mask, and they feel fine, they have no reason to believe they have COVID. They're completely asymptomatic. A reasonable person wouldn't expect to be, endangering other people. It's like I'm fine. Now I realize that from a strict scientific point of view, and it's been said many times, it's been said about every virus that's been out there, is that it's, there is a window where you're asymptomatic and yet can still transfer the virus. I'm just saying that if you open up the ability to criminally charge people, in the case of COVID specifically, you're going to also open up, because it's the exact same logic, you'll open up the ability for people to sue people over things like the influenza. You came over, visited with somebody, and you left, and you got, you ended up with symptoms for influenza, and it's a particularly nasty, say H5N1. It kills lots of people. One of the more nasty versions of the flu, and the couples or the people that you visit, their grandparents catch that and die. Well, now that family has standing to take you to court for some sort of damages. It's a can of worms to try and open up. I would agree that if you're maliciously, like, you have symptoms, you're sick, and you still go out, not wearing a mask or anything like that, and spread it around, that could be a different issue, or especially if you specifically are trying to get people sick.
Just want to stop you for a second here, if I may. I know I'm being rude, but I think something's been misconstrued here with your line of reasoning, and that's that we're not saying. First off, I think you should know that the CDC guidelines don't necessarily recommend wearing a mask outside unless you're in a crowded area. Because walking down a street in a small town, you can probably wear a mask without infecting people because you can social distance easily enough. But what the argument has been, I saw an article where people were talking about having COVID parties, where they're deliberately going to catch COVID to try to get a natural immunity, because somehow going to these parties is the thing you do to become immune from COVID without catching COVID. I don't know. The logic in the article was confused, but.
Oh yeah, but you're also making the choice, knowingly going to a place to spread COVID around.
Randolph has joined us, just so you guys know, and is entering. Your camera's off. If you want to leave it off, great. If you want to turn it on, I'll open the window. Yes, please continue.
Hello.
But the people organizing these COVID parties should have criminal charges brought against them because they know they're potentially killing people.
Well, they have in Canada. Here, some people did run some COVID-19 parties, and the pox parties for the chicken pox stuff, right? Same idea. And they had this small apartment. They filled with over 100 people. Each person got fined, and the host got fined $2,000. And so this was taken very seriously. And I think they planned to do it again. And then the police intervened before they could even start it. And I'm not exactly sure what happened, but apparently only
in
about
Canada,
people caught it.
In Canada, I can understand that because in Canada you have a socialized medical system where your single payer is the government. The government has a vested interest, and if you're going to go and do something that's going to cause a huge tax against the medical system in Canada, potentially denying other people services, they have standing to do something about that. But in the United States, if somebody were to,
we have standing, but it's not about the money. It's about what's proper for public health. That's always the focus.
Well, sure. Yeah. But here, my question is that, okay, so somebody says, hey, I'm going to have a COVID party, and all these people willingly join to, get together. That's their choice. Why?
Doesn't matter.
How can you charge them for that? They're making a free choice.
Question.
Because the person who organizes the party knows there's a good chance that
So do the people
somewhere in
showing
that
up.
chain, hold on. I don't think your argument works. First off, because you're trying to make it all about, it's like, oh, it's my choice. It's like, first off, even if only a few people get COVID from that party, because some people will be naturally immune in any large enough population, just because that's how genetics works, they'll probably infect someone else, and someone in that chain somewhere might die, especially if they're doing contact tracing. They'll know where the original infection came from, if it came from back to that party. The organizer of that party, basically, I mean, it's not premeditated murder, but it's still, what would be, I don't know what the legal term would be here, involuntary manslaughter, essentially.
Reckless
And you're
endangerment
also assuming that even though our government, even though our healthcare system is isn't single payer, that the government has no vested interest in making sure that the hospitals aren't overcrowded, because the hospitals still provide valid services, and it doesn't pay if people are overcrowding hospitals and people start to panic, especially if, like, people on Medicare, who vote, by the way, in large numbers, are not able to get the treatments they need. Like, say some old person has a heart attack, and these people just chose not to get vaccinated. And now that, let's say someone's grandfather has to go to a heart attack and they might survive, and now they're going to die just because someone didn't want to get 2 shots in their arm.
I always err on the side of maximal liberty.
But it doesn't work in a pandemic.
If you decide that you're going to go, a group of people decide they're going to get together in some sort of COVID party, I personally think that it's incredibly stupid, but they have the freedom to make that choice for themselves. And if they get sick and die, that's their fault, not somebody else's.
There is a delineating factor, though, because people aren't always making a decision that's informed. And if somebody's committed an act of fraud to trick them to get into something like this, then that is an issue that does need to be addressed.
Okay, I can agree with you there.
Yeah.
Am I saying the people who caught COVID, some of whom might die because a 2% chance of death is not 0? Am I saying the people who went to the party, even though they're being stupid, should be fined? Or am I saying the organizer of the party should face criminal consequences?
I think you said organizer earlier.
Because the organizer is doing something that they know they shouldn't be doing.
Or the fact that they're organizing it, they have a responsibility to make sure that they have sufficient expertise in their advisory, at least, to make sure that they're doing things properly.
Well,
and make sure everyone quarantines for.
I'm not quite sure. I think I had a point because I wanted to ask Xandring about 2 things. So let me put in one here, just because so you and I have talked a lot about gun control, and I really, there were only 2 human beings I have ever met who had a position on gun control very much ostensibly in opposition to my own, and I profoundly respected those opinions. The first is my father, and the second is Xandring. So, but let me ask you this question, because this is how I sort of framed it.
Okay.
If we can, you and I actually agree on like 95% of the gun control issue, but now let's one of the reasons why at least we can make an argument for guns is because guns rarely accidentally kill people. I mean, if there was no way whatsoever to keep a gun from accidentally going off and killing 30 people, you'd probably reconsider your position. But because guns can be kept, especially if you're trained, really rather safely, and because people don't just carry them around with them suddenly discharging, you can have the position you have. But what if guns did discharge randomly? all the time. And if you carried a gun with you and had it out in the public, it could randomly discharge and shoot somebody. Maybe not kill them, maybe just graze them, maybe not hit anybody. But it could randomly discharge in a random direction every now and then throughout the day. And everybody wanted to carry one. I think that might change your position. And my argument is that everybody who here is now a potential weapon. I am a potential weapon. And I have some obligation. Now, I am not obligated to take, this is why reasonable is used in the law a lot. And it's also reasonable is, I understand, a very difficult term. But I have to take some precautions to protect other people from this weapon that I am now, that is now me. So this idea that people can become weapons, and we're not going to sit there and say you have some obligation to make sure that you who now can and necessarily will hurt people if you get this, and if you stay out long enough, and if nobody takes precautions, you will get this. Everybody's going to get this. If we don't do anything and just go back to lives normally, 99.99999% of the population is going to get it. So we know these things, and this is really reasonable knowledge, so everybody's under some obligation, in my view, to protect other people from the weapon that we have now become. And again, I don't think you're responsible. If you take reasonable precautions and someone still gets sick, I don't think you should be responsible. And yeah, this is going to force questions as to what's reasonable. But if everybody's become a weapon, you don't think you have some responsibility to keep others safe from you?
Sure, if you have some reason to believe that you're going to infect people, like you have symptoms of COVID, but if you're completely symptom-free, you have no reasonable expectation that you're going to get somebody sick.
But everybody
Because
should
you
know
probably
now
won't.
that you will be, if you get it, you will be contagious without having symptoms for at least a couple days, in some cases 2
but
weeks.
the majority, but the overwhelming majority of people who are symptom-free don't have COVID. So that wouldn't be reasonable to expect, if you're symptom-free, that you're going to give somebody COVID. The possibility exists. I mean, we live in a world that has risks, and life is risky. If you have some reason to believe that you may be infected with COVID and you go out, then I could agree with you that you would have some sort of culpability, and that if you didn't take precautions to prevent infecting other people. But if you are completely symptom free and have just been walked through a building, and it turns out that you were infected and didn't know it, or perhaps maybe you were infected and were completely asymptomatic and just didn't have any symptoms of COVID, and you gave it to somebody and you didn't wear a mask, and they say, okay, well, you could have worn a mask and helped prevent some of these people. It's not entirely clear exactly what percentage of people you would have saved by wearing the mask, because they do help, as you pointed out, they help a little, but it's still possible to spread COVID through masks as well.
Hold on.
So how do you prove one way or the other? It's like, I would agree with your reasoning if you had a reason to believe that you were going to transmit it.
Let me interrupt real quick. Jake4D, it's not a link. It's live at In Time Show. Just that's our address on Skype. So put that in. Give us a call. You can join. I have a screen share up from Randolph, and it's this thing. And Randolph, if you can make that a little bigger.
What?
That wasn't a screen share. No, that wasn't a screen. Was that? Did you put that in the Moy? Right. If you can make that
wasn't
bigger.
Randolph.
Oh, who is that? Oh, is that? Sorry,
I'm not
okay,
sharing
that's
the
Porpoise.
screen.
Oh, okay.
Sorry,
Sorry, that's
Skype
Porpoise.
saying that I'm sharing the screen.
No,
It's a Bob the Angry Flower cartoon, and I don't.
Okay.
Sorry, we're talking people.
Because if
Sorry,
Skype's doing that,
I put that up. I put that up because I thought she wanted us to see it, and if I was incorrect, I will take that down, or else we can blow that up. That was Porpoise. So I thought that was for everybody to see.
Oh, you just mixed up who it's not from me.
Yeah, I mixed up who it was. It didn't tell me who it was. I assumed it was you because I think one time you were in here and you were dropping loads. So all right. So anyways, that's it. Anybody wants to join us?
I'm not sharing anything. That would be a big
it was Porpoise.
for me. Skype sharing things without asking me.
All right.
Yeah. I'd be worried about that too. So that's it. If you want to call in live at In Time Show, and then who was it Xandring or somebody was in the middle of, let's cut them off to do that procedural stuff. Sorry.
All right. It's a Bob the Angry Flower cartoon. It's in the meme section of the Discord about an anti-masker going on about the rights.
If anybody else wants anything else put
Sandrine
up in the window, let me know. That is one of the advantages of using Skype, is that I can put up screen shares separately in its own window, and you're still here. But anyways, I think as Sandrine was talking,
it's too small.
Yeah, I put it.
Yeah,
I put
I'll
it
have
down
to go to
because
Discord to look at it.
yeah. You'd have to really full screen share. She took it down because it was just. All right, so where were we? I do apologize, and I interrupted the flow. Okay. I hate doing that, but for Jake 4D wanted in. I should have just typed it. If I was smart, I would have just typed it.
There's one thing I wanted to address that Sandrine didn't quite get right, and I don't know if it was intentional or if he just overlooked it. Wearing a mask does protect you from other people slightly, but the whole point of wearing a mask isn't to protect you, unless you're wearing like an N95 mask. Why everyone needs to wear a mask right now is because your mask protects mask protects other people.
Yeah,
right.
My mask protects other people from me.
It also protects you a little bit.
A little bit, not much.
Yes, if I misspoke on that, I didn't mean to. That it was what I was trying to convey. Was my mask is there to try and prevent me from infecting other people, which it is better at than protecting me, but it still is not certainly not foolproof. And the different studies about exactly how effective it is vary, and it's incredibly annoying trying to sift through all of those studies. But they all agree that it is definitely far more effective at protecting other people if you wear a mask than not wearing a mask, for example.
All right, Randolph, was there something you wanted to...
No, you talked about something earlier that got my interest, but this topic is really good too, so I'm just going to keep it here.
All right.
I am really bad about that. But you can get masks that will protect you more if you pay more for them, like an N95 mask.
Correct. Yes, I have N95 masks in my truck.
Oh, Jesus, of course you do. How much, what fits in that truck of yours?
Oh, I always have N95 masks. I mean, because I go to job sites and stuff where there's can be quite a bit of nastiness floating around in the air. So yeah, I carry N95 masks. Just not because of the pandemic, just because I use them in places where I load. Some of the smelters and stuff where I load.
I never thought it was for the pandemic. I thought maybe it was like a survivalist or whatever. You got the guns, you got the mask, and if I can make fun of you for it, I absolutely do that.
I mean, you can if I want to, but I actually use them, and I buy them in bulk. And so yes, I keep. Well, I have regular surgical masks too. I've got a whole big box of those, just regular surgical masks, and then I have my big box of N95. And I generally use my N95 in factories or places where there's a really large particulate load in the air, especially in confined areas, which.
Yeah, you see, I can see. I can't think of I'll find something. Don't worry.
I mean, I can't think of a doomsday prepper scenario where an N95 mask would actually be all that. I guess maybe a volcanic eruption. That'd probably be a good one. So yeah, if I got caught in a volcanic ash eruption and there was a bunch of ash floating around, the N95 would filter out quite a bit of that fine glass particulate that would shred your lungs. So I mean, yeah. That's why I keep them, is because Yellowstone's going to blow up and kill us all.
Oh, okay. Well, good. I'll make fun of my good conspiracy. Okay, you got a conspiracy theory there. It doesn't.
There we go.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I go on sites where some kind of mask is required, but it's rare for me because I'm mostly working in IT. But like if there's some new construction or something, and there's a lot of dust in the air, and so I'll usually get something like an N95 mask for that. But it sounds like you need to do it regularly.
Well, no, I mean it's not super regularly. It's just there's select places I'll go to once, maybe twice a month. We're in a place that's got be inside of a factory and
yeah,
especially in the wintertime. Like I used to load in Ainsworth Lumber Company, and they make particle board And so the inside of that building, especially in the wintertime, because they close it because it's like negative 3,000 degrees, because it's up in northern Canada. When I load, so it's all closed. So, the air, I mean, you can see through the air. It's just hazy with particle dust and exhaust, because they load all the trucks inside and everything has to be tarped. So you have running trucks inside the building and you have all this machinery. And so, I'll wear an N95 mask for that. But I mean, it's a little bit more common in the winter when I'm stuck inside an enclosed area than it is in the summer.
Yeah. I'm in Canada. It's so I know what you're talking about with the cold temperatures up north.
Oh yeah, Ainsworth is in 100 Mile House, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm in BC as well.
Yeah, our office is 14 miles south of Abbotsford.
Oh, okay. I wonder what that is in kilometers. It's okay.
So
14 miles.
That should be
that should be
28.
That should be approximately 25-ish. No, 20, 23, 24 kilometers.
Oh, that's not very far. Yeah.
A kilometer is 0.6 of a mile, so.
Yeah, here in Canada,
Yeah, well,
we're used to thinking in miles.
I mean,
Yeah,
well, 15 miles is 25 kilometers, so
yeah,
they're close enough.
Oh yeah.
Remember, Americans will measure in anything except the metric system.
Yeah, I really wish they would change that to the metric system. I mean, the units based off of 10 are so much easier.
I learned recently there's a highway somewhere in the U.S. where they have all the signage in metric, and then it stops.
Yeah, there's a couple of them.
Huh?
Yeah, they've got a couple. They've got a couple of them.
Yeah, because they did
listed in
make it start. Yeah.
Yeah, they're listed in both miles and kilometers. I believe it's I-17 going down to Mexico out of
that's the one.
Tucson. Yeah,
Okay.
that's got all the mile markers, and I-29 coming south through North Dakota down into Iowa also has the kilometer markers as
I
well.
wonder how many people get speeding tickets in those places.
I don't know. I don't see what the big problem is. Well, actually, the problem is because Americans generally they're like even though they're usually wrong, they have an idea of what a mile is. And study after study shows that people will drastically underestimate the distance to someplace if it's short distance, and drastically overestimate the distance if it's a long ways away. So, say you live 5 miles from the store, people will underestimate how far away it is to the store. Oh, it's only a mile or two. No, it's like 5 miles. But if you're going 300 miles, then they drastically underestimate the actual distance. So, Americans actually don't know how far a mile really is, but they think they do. So when you give them kilometers, their first reaction is to try and convert it into miles, something that they're familiar with, and that's the wrong approach. Yeah, that's the wrong approach. You need to don't worry about trying to convert into miles. Just put everything up in kilometers and kilometers per hour, and it's not that hard. If it's 100 kilometers away, it's going to take you an hour to get there.
Yep.
Generally speaking.
Yeah, and you can do the same.
Unless you're in Wyoming, where the speed limit's like 140 kilometers an hour.
Okay. Yeah, see, when you're talking about 25 kilometers away from something, I'm thinking, oh, okay, so at 100 on a highway, say it's 100 kilometers an hour, I know how long it'll take me to get there. So
yeah, well, I mean, 100 kilometers an hour is 62 miles per hour. I do a whole bunch of cross-border stuff, so I've got a lot of the conversions stuff down, and I find it far easier. I transfer everything over. My speedometer on my GPS, everything's just transferred over to kilometers. And if the mile markers are in kilometers, the distances are in kilometers, and I'm listing my speed in kilometers, there's no conversion to miles or any of that kind of stuff ever needed. It's like, okay, it's 120 kilometers an hour, speed limit's 110, so it's going to be just a hair over an hour to get there.
Yeah.
That's what they need to do. They just need to bite the bullet, and of course, money's a thing too, because they don't want to, to replace every single sign, all of the mile markers to kilometer markers, because there's 0.6.
It'll take a while.
States that refuse to do it. Texas is not going to do it. Just
Yeah.
because we said do
Yeah,
it.
I mean, it's
If we said
well, I mean, it'd
everybody's
be
staying
hellaciously
and you
expensive.
can't, the way to get Texas to switch is to tell Texas, okay, we're going to pass a law that says nobody can use the metric system in the United States, and we're fuck you, we're switching to the metric system.
That reminds me
Well, I
of
mean,
a
there's
I saw. It said if Obama told everybody that it's not safe to drink battery acid, then there'd be a lot of Republicans within the week.
yeah. The
All right.
problem with converting to metric in the United States is we can't change all of our signs in a fast enough time frame. So we're going to have this piecemeal system where some places is metric, some places is imperial, and you're going to confuse a hell of a lot of people switching between them, trying to get. That's the real reason is money and the fact that we can't do it quickly enough to. That's why it hasn't really been done. Though what they should do is they should do a staggered thing. It's like every sign that they replace now should be listed in both miles and kilometers. And then the next time it needs to be replace it with a sign that's only in kilometers. And if you do that, then you won't run into this area is in miles per hour, this is in kilometers per hour. You'll have enough crossover time, but there isn't enough political will, and people don't care enough about and Americans just don't want to learn about kilometers. They're happy with miles per hour.
That's because the reality is every country that switched had to do this, and Canada was actually waiting for us to switch. And Canada was like, "We'll switch with you." So when you guys are ready, and then they just got tired of waiting. Screw it, we're switching.
Yeah.
And,
No, because the U.S. was starting to switch, and we did it, and the U.S. suddenly stopped after starting.
Well, that's
there's probably too many people were. I think too many people were complaining about it. It's like I don't want to learn a new system.
The U.S. is kind of like the black sheep in the family in a way when it comes to this. There's two other tiny little countries that are still on imperial, and my understanding is it's mainly because the U.S. is. But other than that, it's basically the rest of the world already on metric. So the U.S.
It's ridiculous.
I know people in China who deal in lumber, and when they were dealing with all these imperial measurements in the U.S. and in Canada, it's hit and miss. Some are on metric, some are on imperial, because a lot of lumber companies here deal with the U.S., so they're just used to dealing in imperial. It was confusing for them. They thought, this is really weird. Why are you using this weird old numbering to measure all this?
Yeah.
That costs like what?
That's
100
based
million?
on units of 12. Yeah, it's based on units of 12, except where it's not. It's kind of like English, it follows rules except when it doesn't.
You have a 2x4 that's actually less than.
Rebooted, so it's back up.
You can repeat.
And I'm reconnecting it. People may need to switch live chats. We will see.
I saw Jeff Bezos in measurements for his space stuff were all in imperial, and I thought all the space agencies around the world have standardized on metric. What are they doing?
Jeff Bezos. Why did we let him come back?
What we? That was getting Jeff Bezos. Yeah, we knew we could get Jeff Bezos into space. The question was, did we want to get him back? All right, so we should be reconnected. Yeah, the stream crashed. It's rebooted, and we should be reconnected. So,
it's back for me too.
Reagan ruins everything. Nick, hold my. Thanks, Maya.
Wait, did the stream end?
Yeah. You're not gonna find any argument for me over the whole imperial versus metric. We should just go to metric. It's a better system. There's some arguments like the Fahrenheit temperature scale, for example, is more accurate than Celsius, but they use decimal points. So is it really, there's a couple of measurements that are more accurate, because they're technically a smaller unit of measure. But like I said, that's solved with decimal points, and any system based off of tens is far superior to a system based off of 12s.
Well,
Fahrenheit does have a greater degree of granularity. So, it's like Fahrenheit has twice the, which actually does mean something.
And for some reason, people can't remember that at sea level, water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. It freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit.
It's much
easier to remember that.
Okay, yeah, you're being a smart. Yeah. Oh, is your Indian wants extra
water
point
freezes
for
at
making
0
the point in a clever way?
But it's much easier to remember that water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and boils at 100 degrees Celsius. That's an easier thing to remember. That's actually the big one that I actually do want to make sure that I convert and the interesting thing is -40 Fahrenheit is also -40 Celsius. That's where they line up, is at -40. Ask me how I know.
Wait, how you know that what lines up? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Celsius and Fahrenheit, the temperatures line up. They're the same at -40.
Okay.
So -40 Fahrenheit is also -40 Celsius.
How do you know that?
Because I went to a place where it was -40, as like 300 kilometers north of Fort St. John, almost up to the Yukon. Actually, I think that was almost to the Northwest Territories, and it was -40, and their temperature -40 C matched my temperature on my truck at -40 F. So that's where they line up.
Or you could just look at a thermometer.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, was thermometers.
That's what Google is for.
Yeah, the one that has both on it. If it goes down to -40, most of your thermometers don't.
Most of them don't need to.
Yeah, unless you're
True.
in Canada.
I don't know. I've had some cool day. I've been through some cool days, but they're pretty rare.
There's some places in the U.S. where it gets down to -40.
Well, in Alaska, and I think North Dakota. What's the?
Yeah, I was going to say continental U.S. I mean, there's I lived in Lander, grew up in Lander, Wyoming, and we spent a week at almost -40. So.
In Wyoming, I didn't realize Wyoming was that cold.
Yeah, it's unusual.
Was that after Yellowstone erupted?
Yeah, that was after. Yeah, well, the whole United States will get down to -40 if Yellowstone erupts. And I really feel sorry for our Canadian buddies because they're going to be at like -100.
So I'd like to see us switch to Kelvin actually instead of because it's just like Celsius, but it's metric. But it's 0 is just there's no heat at all. It's much simpler. You don't end up with negative numbers. It's just easier to express. But all this stuff still takes political will and people having an interest in doing it. The other thing I'd like to see is standard date format and a standard time format being 24-hour time. For the date format should be like largest to smallest, like it is with time, hours to minutes to seconds. So it should be like year, month, day. Should always be the standard. Instead of these two formats that the US uses, one is month, day, year, and the other one's day, month, year, depending who you talk to. And each person you talk to is so sure that nobody else is using the other one. And it's all messed up when you see dates like 03, 04, 05. Like, what the heck is that? Which month and day and year are we talking about? It doesn't make any sense.
I never date. Well, I was in the Navy, so I never date things that way. It's always, I always write, like if it's the 4th of June of 2020, it would be 04 June 2020.
Yeah. Yeah, I always put the year first and the day of the month last, and I spell out 3 letters for the month if I want to shorten formed. So I'll put like 2020 Feb 25.
I just do it backwards. I do day, month, year.
Yeah.
Because that's like if when you're in general conversation, if you're going to give somebody the date, you give them the 24th of June 1976. That in a conversation, that's how it would be, you would give a date. So that's the way I write my dates as well. But I always spell the month.
It's just some places that aren't.
Yeah, but there is no standard, so and that can be a problem.
There is a standard. The ISO set that standard for year, month, day.
It's okay, Randolph. We all know that the world's going to end in 2038 anyway.
Yeah, there's all the blocks, right?
The world done ended in 2012. You guys just haven't caught up yet.
Oh, the sinister porpoise is referring to Unix time.
Oh, okay.
Oh, why is that?
It's when the current Unix epoch ends.
Yeah, it runs out of bits, binary bits. It all flips back to 0.
Oh, are we going to have like a Linux Y2K issue now?
No, it's going to be fixed before then.
I think they fixed it a long time ago. They knew what was going to happen.
Well, I mean, Y2K was mostly fixed before it came along, too. I mean, it was a problem they knew about.
No, actually, there's a lot of stuff that broke, mostly on Windows machines.
But it just didn't cause a huge issue.
Yeah, it didn't cause a huge issue.
Yeah, none of my devices had an issue.
So
the world didn't end.
Randolph, I believe you had a question about the previous bit that we were talking about. Is that was it the fetus, or there's something I had made that you wanted to? Yes, no, maybe.
Something that you said about the fetus, that's all. You were talking abortion earlier. I didn't want to derail the conversation, so we can carry on with what we're talking about. It's fine. Whatever you like.
Oh, it doesn't matter to me. There seemed to be a lull, so I figured it would go back, but we don't have to. You know what? We can start talking serious stuff, or we can start. It's entirely. I am good either way.
Okay, I remember you mentioned something about the fetus was bothering you in the abortion conversation.
The only thing I can remember that was bothering me about it that I was thinking about was I'm not entirely comfortable with the idea of if somebody commits murder and there is no way to know that the woman was pregnant, and the woman was pregnant, charging them with a double homicide of both the baby and the mother. That feels like piling on, and
actually, I agree with you on that. I think if it's clear that the intention was to bring the fetus to term, then that can be a consideration. But if the intention of the person doing the killing was that they didn't know, that's really not fair with the fundamentals of justice in that. But they do still carry some responsibility, so a possible involuntary manslaughter charge could be added to it at best. But calling it a double homicide, I think, is going too far. I agree with you.
Yeah, I think that's a much more reasonable position.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it follows along the line of like felony murder, for example. If you're charged with felony murder, somebody dies while you're committing a murder, like you're doing a carjacking, for example, and the person has a heart attack and dies. Yeah, I mean, when you're committing a felony, sorry.
Yeah.
So say you're going to carjack somebody, the guy. Yeah, you carjack somebody. The guy has a heart attack and dies from stress. Then you're charged with felony murder because a person died during the committing of a felony. You get a murder charge as well. And it's like, wait a minute, I had no intention of killing that guy. I had no expectation that the guy was going to die. I just wanted to steal his car. Why am I being charged with murder? It's not my fault the guy died. Well, actually it is, but but we do that. Yeah. As well, we charge people with murder if somebody dies while you're committing a felony. I mean, you could be doing tax evasion and give somebody a heart attack because they just realize the IRS is coming after them, and now you're getting charged not only with tax evasion but felony murder as well. That's the thing that we do.
Well, it's the whole process of getting cute with the law that really, really kind of bugs me. And human beings love getting cute, and I've been known to get cute on occasion. And it's also self-satisfying because, like, hey, I outsmarted the system. But it's like when you find a way to snag somebody on something that just isn't a reasonable charge, but they're a bad person anyway. So hey, why not do that? I have an issue now. We just gave a whole bunch of good examples. Now, of course, the one that I actually agree with, but I think that's because the final charge was so much less than what he was guilty of, was Capone. So, yeah, I have no problem with the fact that they got Capone on. And by the way, he really did do tax evasion, so it's not like, but, he's a murderer who was in jail for tax evasion. But that was at least a legit charge. He really did do tax evasion, and he was getting away with so much more. But it smacks a bit of, actually, especially what was done in the South when, if you wanted to throw a black man in jail, all you had to do was find a minor technicality and blow it up into this huge, huge thing, and then you could put them in jail for the rest of their lives. And everybody always feels justified when they do shit like that, and it turns out they're very rarely justified when they do shit like that. So, yeah.
Well, and people tend to be very unsympathetic to people who they consider to be bad already. So if you're committing a felony, the general population already thinks you're a bad person, so they don't have a problem with slapping a murder charge on you as well, even though you had zero intentions of harming anybody. You know, it just was an unfortunate accident that somebody happened to die while you were committing a felony. You know, and some of the things that we consider felonies, I think, are ridiculous as well. They shouldn't be felonies. There's far fewer of those, but
yeah, and it's what was the other one? Oh shoot, I just had one. But it's trumped up charges even on people who are guilty of something, and that's what the fetus one reminds me of. And I know there are a lot of pro-choice advocates who are upset about it because what they say is, well, it's a backdoor to try to make the fetus. Because once you do that, you are actually de facto then saying that killing a fetus deliberately is murder. But that's not my objection to it, believe it or not. That somebody's making that argument, but that's the other. I mean, if you're pro-choice, it seems to me you would want to avoid somebody doing that. But you know, if somebody's a murderer, you say, well, they murdered somebody, but let's just tack on a second one because we think we can make the argument. I don't think that's the reason to give even a murderer a second murder charge.
All right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because the fetus is just still a portion of the pregnant person's body. I'm definitely pro-choice and pro-freedom, pro-abortion for those who want it without having to justify it at any point in the pregnancy. So, and I mean that literally, because the human right of bodily autonomy to me is paramount.
We should discuss that.
But the thing is, like, when the problem is if it's a double homicide because there's one fetus and one pregnant person together, then it kind of implies that that is a separate person who deserves rights, which is, to me, not consistent with my pro-choice, pro-freedom kind of view.
So I think Porpoise wanted to say something, and then I do want to get back to that. But Porpoise, please.
No, I really do have a question here because we seem to be focusing on this for some reason. And I have a feeling this has something to do with a news story I've been ignoring through rampant apathy. Has there been some new update in the Gabby Petito case?
Yeah, they found a body that I guess they're reasonably sure is her. I don't know. Last I heard, they were reasonably sure it was her, but they hadn't done a positive ID, and they are now actively looking for the husband who has gone into hiding. It looks like he went out camping. But I shouldn't say went out camping. He is actively evading authorities. It looks like he was aware he was going to get busted. And so he's now pulled an Eric Rudolph and is out in...
Eric Rudolph.
He's out in the middle of nowhere hiding from the authorities, and so far has successfully evaded them.
Was she pregnant, though?
I do not know. Somebody in the live chat may.
Because I'm wondering where this story comes from.
Okay, hold on one sec. And, yeah, please, I'm sorry, please continue. What?
Oh, this pregnancy thing is a new factor I'm not aware of. So,
well, like I said, I've been ignoring the story through rampant apathy, so I thought this might have been connected.
Oh, wow. No, we were just talking about something that came up earlier in this conversation when you were talking about the abortion stuff going on, anti-abortion stuff going on in Texas.
Yeah, and Maya brought up a excellent point, which
this is
often lost, which is that whether you believe in personhood or not, too, people are always going to get abortions, and if they're legal, you save more lives. So, Jake, just do a. Oh, sorry, we had a technical issue here. Not entirely sure. The software that hosts the show crashed. We were able to reboot it and reconnect before we lost the stream, so we reconnected to it. But there is something very wonky on the back end. The CPU is taking up like a bazillion cycles, and I'm working on it. But why don't you call in? I should see you come up when you call in. If you don't make the first call, just call a second time, and we'll bring you in. So that'll be Jake4D. So. Personal autonomy, and somebody had been arguing recently, and I forget who. Brain fog is doing so much better, but I keep getting hit with bouts of it. Somebody had argued that there is a very large emphasis in our culture on bodily autonomy, and perhaps more than there should be, because we sit there and say, well, bodily autonomy, especially in the U.S., we say bodily autonomy is first and foremost and paramount, even in, for example, these cases where it's like, well, I don't want to have a vaccine. Yeah, well, so, and I wanted to say that it was 𝐒𝐴NDRing, but I actually don't think it was 𝐒𝐴NDRing, and now I'm trying to remember who I was having that discussion with. So you brought it up, and it may be, I really, what I'm trying to do is I have a thing of popcorn, and I was just trying to get 𝐒𝐴NDRing and Randolph to go at it, but this may not be the topic for that.
No, this wasn't the topic that it was, because I believe in bodily autonomy as well. That's actually the argument that made me pro-choice. For the longest time, I was neither. I was like, one, I don't have a dog in this race, so I didn't look too closely at it. But two, I was like, I really don't know what the correct answer is here.
Yeah.
And it was actually Shannon Q that made the argument that finally convinced me and it was the bodily autonomy that was like, look, we hold bodily autonomy in such high regard that even if I were to shoot you, say in your liver, and destroy your liver, and you can't live without it.
Oh yeah,
we hold bodily autonomy so high.
Okay, yeah,
that I can't. Okay, that I cannot be forced to give up a portion of my liver to save your life, even though I'm the one that blew your liver to pieces. That's how highly we regard bodily autonomy. And so if a woman does not want to, lend her body to a fetus so that it can survive, she has the right to say, no, you can't use my body for even if you would die without it.
They have that right at any time. Yeah.
Say again?
They have that right at any time. Some people think it should be limited only to be allowed at the first trimester or the first 2 trimesters, and I still see that as anti-abortion.
Okay, so could you you've said this before, and I've heard you get into this discussion before, so I've got some idea, but could you expand on this a little point? At any time, does that mean from conception literally to birth, at any time, that time? And I will say, you are not proposing, say, 1, 2, or even 3 years after. You're just, they're never mind.
Wait, what?
Bad joke.
Nick. No, Nick. I didn't say anything about that for any point during the pregnancy.
That was a reference that you're going to get. You're going to get that reference in about 5 minutes, and you'll be kicking yourself for not having gotten it sooner. But at any point, at any rate,
I think I've got it. The moment you said 3 years.
It was. So,
that is a very sick and that is a very disturbed individual who advocated for infanticide and called it abortion up to 3 years. That was just. That was atrocious. That was horrific. And, because infanticide is illegal.
Let's be fair. She's not that smart, but she was talking about euthanasia in specific circumstances, but she didn't really watch the words she was using.
Well, she's got to be responsible for her words there. And she laughed about it, and she went on and on about it. She didn't correct you. She had a lot of opportunity for that. She's sick. She's got some serious problems.
Oh, I don't care for her. It's just in context. That's what she was talking about.
No, I heard the whole thing. It was more than just one thing. She was very sure about it, and she gave examples. She was quite clear.
I just don't think she knows what abort means.
My interpretation, and this is going to sound like it's absolving. It's not. At least I'm certainly not trying to. My interpretation, and as someone who's had disagreements with the person since day one, which was quite some time ago, it struck me as being said more explicitly to say something controversial and to cause drama, and B, was in fact trying to be a very poorly made argument for euthanasia, and did double down. Don't get me wrong, double down when was given an opportunity to. Hey, didn't you maybe? Yeah, I think has handled that very poorly, but that happened in that conversation. But if you're using something so sick, so horrific, so atrocious to be controversial, you've got a problem. You need psychotherapy.
I would agree. I can't disagree with Randolph on that one. And there's a certain nickname she's earned at this point that I'm not going to repeat.
I think I may have heard it.
So let's well, anyways, it was a poor joke, just aimed. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
I don't take it as a joke from her. I don't think she was joking.
No, I mean myself. When I said that a second ago or a minute ago, I had said, Randolph, that presumably you don't mean as far as she had meant, and that was
no, I know you. I knew you were. I knew what you were talking about, but yeah. And I was just clarifying because you said up to birth, and I said, and when I'm talking about pro-choice, pro-abortion, it's not up to birth; it's up to the end of the term of the pregnancy, which is before birth.
Also, let's be fair. By definition, you can't abort a child after it's born.
Yes.
So to me, it's like. Yeah. I expect that, if somebody makes a choice to terminate their pregnancy, to have that abortion, they don't owe anybody any kind of explanation for why. That's their choice. That's their freedom. That's my view.
All right, yeah, we hold bodily autonomy so sacrosanct, that if you're going to make the position that bodily autonomy should be held sacrosanct, then you can't argue against abortion.
Have you?
But I do also believe.
Please
go ahead. Oh, I said I also believe that rightfully we hold bodily autonomy at sacrosanct, and that if you don't want to put something into your body, then you should not be compelled to do so. That doesn't mean so if you don't want to get a vaccination, then there should be no legal mechanism that compels you to do so. That doesn't mean that it can't be without consequence, though. If a company decides that in order, as a condition of your employment here, you must have X, Y, and Z vaccine, and you say, well, I'm not going to get those vaccines, well, you don't get to work there.
Mm-hmm. So that's condition of employment before you hired on.
I'm not so sure. No.
Well, that's condition of employment before you hire on. That let's say, or like. Because the company needs to have people who are healthy working there. And if somebody's bringing in any kind of disease, they're putting other employees and customers at risk by interacting with them.
Correct. And they could require their employees to get a vaccine. Like in the case of COVID, we just came out with a vaccine. It wasn't available before. Let's say you started working with the company before the vaccine was developed. Now the vaccine is developed and they say, hey, this is a serious risk to not only our employees, but our customers. This is going to be established as a condition of employment. And you say, no, I'm not getting the jab. Then I'm sorry, you can no longer continue to work here. I don't believe that there should be any kind of legal mechanism that would compel somebody to get a vaccine against their wishes. I don't believe that it can, or that it shouldn't be consequence free.
So
I'm not sure we can.
So the difference is, like with the vaccine, it is preventing some disease from getting around that will interfere with the lives of others. Getting an abortion does not cause health problems for others. So
it may cause health problems for the fetus that's aborted.
Huh?
If I may,
what?
Sandrine, you understand? You've heard the phrase like. The freedom to swing your arm ends. Yeah,
that's
my freedom to swing my arm ends where your nose begins.
Yeah, where my face begins. Yes.
That's basically what it comes down to with vaccines. I'm also guessing that you went to middle school, high school, elementary school, and maybe college.
Yes.
I'm guessing just because I had to do it when I went back to college, I had to prove I had certain vaccines. You had to make sure you had certain vaccines. Your parents did.
To attend public school, I had to. My parents had to show that I had certain vaccines. Yes, I did not have to prove any vaccinations to go to college.
I had to prove vaccinations to go to college.
You made it. Go ahead. Finish what you're asking.
So we already have government mandates for vaccines, and basically the reasons we have vaccines is because you don't have a right to infect someone else if you can prevent it. Because you're.
No, we have government mandates. We don't have government mandates for vaccine. There's plenty of children that aren't vaccinated.
We do have government mandates
Now the government,
or we've had them. We've had federal mandates in the past. That was the Nate's video that he covered that, but I forget what it was. We don't have them for the ones that I think most people get, but every state has them, but they're done at the state level, not the federal.
So there's precedent.
States have very broad authority to pass public health safety regulations.
And I would agree that I would also say that, I don't know, right now my patience is just wearing thin with a lot of these people.
Yeah, I was saying it earlier. It's the what did you call it? Empathy? No, sympathy? No, empathy fatigue.
Compassion fatigue.
Compassion fatigue. That was it. And just so everyone knows,
Wow.
Brandon has joined us. But let's please finish the thing.
I just need to get back to one thing here because you're the fellow. I'm sorry, I don't know your name because I don't see it on the screen.
His name is Brandon.
Brandon? No, not Brandon. Brandon just joined. No, I'm not talking about who just joined. The other fellow.
Is Andring.
Zandring. So Zandring, you just mentioned about it creates a problem for the fetus. So what? What's the issue?
And I don't think it does because the fetus is aborted. It will never be able to experience anything. So how does it cause problems for it?
Well,
sorry, that wasn't directed at Brandon. That was directed at the other person.
Zandring had said it's a problem. So I think somebody had said, well, it's not a problem for the woman, and then I think Zandring said, well, it's a problem for the fetus.
Oh, I think it was the abortion doesn't cause problems for anybody else, and I kind of flippantly said, well, it causes a pretty significant problem for the fetus.
Okay, so the fetus is a part of the pregnant person's body. So I think
I don't believe that.
Okay,
I think he was being flippant. He's pro-choice, but I think he was just being kind of. I think he was.
The problem.
I am pro-choice.
The problem coming from the anti-abortion crowd, I find, is that they think it's a person, and it's not. It's part of the pregnant person's body, the way I see it, and so it's up to them to decide what they
agree with that.
Yeah, I know you.
I don't agree with that. Yeah. Because it has its own genetic code. I do believe that it is an individual. It is an individual that is attached to the woman's body and is using the woman's body for its survival. And where I had the bodily autonomy argument that convinced me is even though it is an individual, it has its own DNA, etc. It still doesn't have the right to use the mother's body without the mother's permission. So the mother has the right to say, no, you're going to be removed from my body. And so that was the argument that convinced me to be
You and I are definitely on the same page with that. To say it's attached, to me, that's not just an attachment. That is a part of the pregnant person's body. They're sharing a lot of different things.
They're sharing bodily fluids, but it's like saying that conjoined twins are the same person.
No, it's not. They're born, right? So
they're born, but they're conjoined. They're sharing organs. They're attached to each other, and we still consider them as individuals. Okay, so I consider the child or the fetus to be an individual. It is an individual distinct from the mother. It is attached to the mother, and the mother has the choice as to whether that attachment continues or not.
And consider a tapeworm that is attached to a person. Does it deserve rights? It has its own genetic code.
But it's still its own individual entity.
I don't understand your...
Right?
The tapeworm is its own individual entity.
Okay.
More so than a fetus, indeed.
I think one of the interesting problems about this discussion
I do want to welcome Brendan. If we can take 1 minute, I do want to welcome Brendan.
It's all good.
Get this issue sorted before we talk to you. Sorry.
It's all good. I'm fascinated with this discussion.
Yeah, no, we're not in disagreement about the mother's rights. I just view the fetus is an individual, separate individual than the mother.
And that's an important argument to understand.
Not part of the mother.
Yeah, and that's an important. And it's also
this is our point.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, this is our point of disagreement. I agree. Yeah.
All right. Also, if I may interject some levity, since the state has been mentioned all night, how do you know if someone's from Texas?
How?
Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Oh, did you see that?
Don't worry, they'll tell you.
We've got some like that here in Canada too.
There was a
and I think one of the
They don't call it Texas.
in New York, a New York restaurant. There was this big thing, and I saw there was a whole thread discussion on it. A lot of Texans were pissed. It's like, well, how did they know they were from Texas? It's like, please. But there was so a woman and some friends. They were in New York. They went to a restaurant. The restaurant had a mask policy, and the waitress asked that they wear their mask, and the lady got upset and said she didn't have a mask, she wasn't going to wear a mask, and she wasn't going to leave. This precipitated a physical altercation where the lady struck the waitress. Now she's been charged with, I think it was a battery and a couple of other things, malicious mischief, I think. And but apparently there had been. I've got one more coming in who is. Yeah, let's. So we had gotten. So, anyways, but a lot of people were upset because of the. Well, A, how did they know she was from New York? And B, don't they have the right to? It's like, well, yeah, but the restaurant has the right to refuse service, and they were told you can't do it. And I think in New York they have a mask mandate. So, yeah. Hold on, I think we got someone else in. I don't know if I got him in or not. Hold on, somebody had just called, but I may have. It gives me like 10, not even 10 seconds to hit that button. It looked like it was a native atheist. Who just? We get someone else in? Nope. Looks like.
Me, Jake.
Jacob.
Oh, it's Jake. Oh, it's Jake. Oh, Jake. How are you, Jake? Good to see you.
Hey.
All right. So
wait. How's that working?
seems to be working now.
Good. Perfect. Yep. I see you perfectly. I'll put you in a window there. But since the Xander's keeping his thing off, I'll put you in the Xander's window. All right. So where were we?
Well, it's too dark. It's too dark where I'm at. You can't see me anyway. You just see a black screen.
I think we're about to debate whether or not DNA was computer code, and we lost some. Brandon.
There was that, because I've been arguing with what's his name, and he said every programmer has agreed that DNA is computer code, and I'm a programmer, so I can tell you. I was like, look, I'm a programmer. I've heard a few programmers say that there's similarities. Doesn't mean it's the same. I've never heard anyone actually argue, who's both a programmer and a biologist, argue that they're identical. And he just said, no, ask anybody who's an experienced programmer or anything. I was like, I know just the person I'm gonna ask.
Well, you got this forum at least.
You can make chemical computers, but DNA is not a chemical computer.
Well, and I don't know what his grounds were for it was code, and he had an argument, and I got to tell you, I'm reasonably well versed in philosophy and arguments, and I couldn't comprehend either what his argument was or how he went through. Okay, here's premise one, here's premise two. I was just like, I can't even get past premise one. I was just like, this is so thrown together, and on what grounds are you making any of these arguments? I've been programming my entire life. Never. Yep.
You're talking about John Maddox, aren't you?
Yeah. How did? Wow. Are you psychic?
I want to talk to this person.
No, you don't.
Oh, yes, I do.
Hey, next time I'm on, I will bring you on. But he is not a particularly pleasant human being, and
you might want to watch the debate that he and I were in on Modern Day Debate a while ago. Yeah. It was about whether atheism leads to skepticism leads to atheism, and he spent the first 20 minutes to half an hour going over the definition of atheism using a bunch of Steve McRae's arguments.
Oh, good God.
Well, yeah. And he's...
Are you sure you want to talk to him?
Well, and what I found
I guarantee I'll spend the whole time mocking him.
Yeah, he's gonna... So I had jumped into his... it was late one night, I was bored, and I'm actually still glad I did it. It was tough for any number of reasons, and I haven't been my best, but it's good to, and I want to actually hang with the guy again, but he's not a pleasant human being. That's kind of why I want to hang with him, because it's like, you know what, I want to get back into, I don't know that I'm going to do formal debates or anything like that, but I want to get back into hanging with some truly unreasonable people, because that's how you learn to get better at this stuff. I'm debating.
So that's why you invited me on. That's the only reason I'm here.
That's the only. You got it. That's your. It's not the only reason, but it's the biggest. I also have you on in principle, so that I can sit there and say, well, I have a friend who's a gun nut. I have Republican friends. I don't hate Republicans. I have friends that are Republican.
So I'm the token.
You're exactly. Exactly.
Congratulations.
Wait, hey, I gotta aspire to at least something in my life.
Might as
I
well
would like
that,
to
at least, because that's easy.
I would like to hear this person's argument, because while I would say that there is an analogy that may be made between computer code and DNA, the language I'd probably compare it to most easily is assembly language.
Actually, he claims that DNA is a code that was programmed by God, and it has functions in it.
Yes, he claims it has functions, and that was so. He does a whole thing. Goes, all code has these properties, and I was just like, look, most code that I've seen has these properties. I've never seen them quite arranged in this order or put together this way, and I've never seen somebody that I consider to be an authority sit down and say, yes, you can identify a code by these properties. These are necessary and sufficient properties for code. But he made that claim, and I was looking at it. I said, "This is really looking a bit more like word salad than an actual thing." I'll get you the link because he's got it. It's only 2 minutes. It's 3 or 4 minutes actually. And then he's like, "Go see part 2." I was like, "No, I'm done. Part 1 was good enough for me."
Functions in programming are more akin to functions in mathematics, and I don't think that's how he's using it.
I don't either, but that's how. Yeah, he said so. All code has.
He's thinking more like subroutines.
More like what?
More than just mathematical functions. He's thinking full
procedures or yeah.
Well, it also depends on language whether they're called functions. Like in Pascal, you have both functions and procedures, and they're different things. But...
Well, the only difference in Pascal between a function and a procedure is a function returns a value, a procedure doesn't. Well, no, it's actually but it as a parameter too in Pascal. In Pascal, a function will have an input and or output parameter, and a procedure just has an input.
Generally, a function will be something like a math function, like cosine or tangent or whatever, or random. It just returns a very simple kind of. It's very mathematical and very straightforward. Whereas a whole subroutine will do a lot more, and it'll still return something if you program it to do that. It also depends on the language too. The different languages define these things differently.
I can't believe I remembered it in Pascal. I think I got it accurately. Porpoise will correct me if I'm wrong, but if I remember that difference in because Pascal was the first one where I really learned, because I learned BASIC first, and then Pascal. But Pascal, a procedure, a procedure is essentially a subroutine, but you turn it into and it can have input parameters, but no output parameters. It can have output parameters, but a function returns a value, so you can use it. You can assign a variable to a function. You can't assign a variable to a procedure. That's it. Holy smoke. Yeah. I can't believe I remember that.
Well, a function must also be...
that sounds right.
Pascal does this weirdly. I think Ada does it the same way, but I've never really learned Ada. A function must have a data type associated with it as well, because you're...
Well, it has to, because it has to return a value. Even if the value is 0, it has to return a value. That's the whole point of a function. So it has to be assigned a data type and can be used in exchange for a variable, so long as you're not assigning it a value. All right. So, anyways, that's it. I was going to ask. Like I said, I'm going to go back on. I think at some point, they got, once they realized I wasn't really trying to make them look bad or do anything like that. They were reasonably pleasant, and then at one point they said, "Well, anybody who does," and I forget what it was, but it was something that clearly was a position I hold. Anyone who believes this, and I'm not saying you, Nick, I'm not, but anybody who believes this is an idiot. And they're stupid, and they're this, and this. He goes, by the way, we're not talking about you. I was just like, okay. I'm like, cool. That's cool. Just keep going.
Don't call him a clown. He really dislikes that.
Oh, well, I will try not to. I'm glad to know that he dislikes that. I get the feeling that that was a little bit like, hey, Nick, make sure.
There's some background here. There's some background to this. Praise I Am That I Am is a friend of his, was running a stream, and in the stream's title it said that John Maddox is a clown, and so John got on and he was furious, and it sounded like he was trying hard to sound furious but not quite doing it. But he was mad. Hello, Jake.
So, this person's name is Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. How you guys doing?
And where did Brandon go to? Is he around here still?
That's a question.
I may not have liked this. May not have liked the Cheshire Vic joke.
And he may have been coming in for that, and that was entirely my fault. I shouldn't have even said it.
I think Brandon wanted.
I am stupidest when I try to be funny.
I think Brandon wanted to discuss the abortion stuff, but he mentioned something about heartbeat detection, and I guess because we were already trying to go back to that other tangent, then it got. I think he got. I hope he'll come back.
So what
as soon as you start getting more and more people in it, it can get a lot more difficult because people start going in different ways, and everybody has their own tangent, and then it can get a little bit more difficult the more people you get in.
So what's up? First of all, I want to know: did John Maddox teach 𝐂𝐚𝐥𝐥 Discord server administration?
Oh no! Don't tell me. Yes, for those who don't know, so I got an invite into 𝐂𝐚𝐥𝐿's Discord, and I 𝐂𝐚𝐥𝐿. One of the things that kind of bothers me about 𝐂𝐚𝐥𝐿, there's a few things, but one of them is that he seems to think everybody's completely disingenuous, and he's very suspicious of everybody, and maybe I don't know, but I'm sitting there going, sure, I'll join. I probably won't stick around too long. And if he's doing something really stupid that opens him up to a huge vulnerability, I'll help him out. And it's not because I'm going to put in a back door. I'll help him out because I think his opinions are wrong. I think the more he gets a chance to talk about them, the more people will eventually realize it. I got no problem with that. And I'm here because of the charity of people who didn't agree with every position I held. So, if he wants to create a Discord, fine. So, but by the time I got there, the damage was done. I had no idea. Porpoise knows better than I, but apparently, did everybody who came in have admin privileges or yeah.
I feel sorry for him for that, because that's kind of really not fair to him. But it's just how things go, right? But hopefully, whoever did it handed the keys back to him and let him get it all corrected, because it takes work to set that stuff up. Now, I was moderating a conversation between Godless Granny and 𝐂𝐚𝐥𝐿 just within the last few days on Godless Granny's channel.
No, wait, I'm thinking of someone else. Never mind.
It actually went really well, and I told 𝐂𝐚𝐥𝐿 afterwards that I have some newfound respect for him, because he admitted that there were things that he didn't know when he was asked certain questions, and I do have respect for people who do that. I think that is a good thing to do, and he was apologizing for it, and I said, you don't need to apologize for that. You're being honest. That's fine. Do this more. If you don't know, it's perfectly okay to say that. Many of us do this. So he seemed to react like he felt reassured, and I thought, this is good. Maybe we can gradually coax him over into being better at critical thinking is what I'm hoping here.
So Jake, was there something in particular?
He's going to be the next Brett Keane, though.
Not the next Darth Dawkins, because he studied under Darth Dawkins for a bit, right?
Yeah, but Darth ripped him a new ones.
What I saw.
Well, he was studying under him, though, because he wanted to get better at presuppositional apologetics, and so he did study under Darth Dawkins a little bit.
Well, so I do want to find out, Jake, how are you?
Welcome.
But
every time I hear Darth,
he's sort of the new one. I want to. Oh, we lost Jake. Oh,
every time I hear Darth Dawkins, I just have an overwhelming urge to punch him.
I've heard other people say that too. That sort of thing. I wonder if Nick and Jake 4D have both had some connection issues here.
No, well, well, it does actually now. Skype does appear to be. Hold on, something. Okay. Let's just see what. Yeah, I don't.
Abortion in this country that didn't really exist, like in ancient Judaism, as far as I know, but people can correct me on this. I'm not an expert on this topic. Is that in Judaism, life doesn't begin until after the fetus can breathe on its own, essentially. The spirit is attached after the child is born and leaves the womb. In Christianity, largely, the spirit is attached to conception, and I think that's a lot of why there's like a heated abortion debate, because we assume, rightly or wrongly, that the child has a spirit at conception, and if it has a spirit or soul, rather, it should have all the rights of a human, even though we can't prove a soul.
I contend there's no debate. It's just people who are trying to control other people.
I agree with that from just the Bible itself.
Oh, the Bible, yeah. So my argument, I've had one argument that I've had basically from the beginning, which is...
I got to be like the weirdest conservative ever. I'm pro-choice. I think the Bible's rubbish.
Have you met the Libertarian Party in America?
I know.
Well, that's actually what I identify as a libertarian, not specifically because I'm fiscally, economically very conservative, but socially I'm as liberal as they come.
And I know atheists who vote Republican.
I used to be more conservative, but then I moved to a red state.
Yeah, that I could see how that might sour you.
Yeah.
So I've always had. So for me, I've had a couple of positions which have been reasonably controversial. So the first one, and I started with this one in high school, and a little high school kid running around saying these things. But first of all, I think at least the way it's set up in the U.S. right now, because the man has a financial responsibility with the child, if the woman decides to carry the child to term, the man obviously cannot choose to, abort the child, and regardless of what the woman says. In fact, the man has absolutely no choice in that. But it's one of the very few areas in U.S. law where you are completely responsible for the choice or the freedom that another person has. And if they decide to have the child or not is going to drastically influence your future, and you have no say in it, even though you were an equal part in creating the child. So I've always at least been an advocate for the fact that men, have a right to at least have an opinion on the abortion issue, which I've been told many times men don't because they can't carry a child, and I don't think that's true. And second of all,
you're talking specifically about the biological father, right?
Yes, only about the biological father, but because any of us could be a biological father, we have a right on that. Now, that's still a very small right compared to the second argument, which is a greater right, which is if you truly believe that is a human being, then as a male, you have a moral obligation to speak out on it in the same way that in the North, short of the Civil War, if you believed that a black man was a human being, you had a moral obligation to say slavery is immoral. The arguments used by the South at the time were, well, you don't have any slaves, so it's really easy for you to say we have to abandon slavery and that they're human beings. You don't suffer any consequences of us making slavery illegal, so you cannot be allowed to have a say in this. Well, if you truly believe that a human being's rights are being violated, you have a moral obligation to be involved. So despite whether or not I agree with pro-lifers, I do believe that they have a moral obligation to speak their mind if they think that a human life is being taken. So, anyways, those are my views.
But I also don't think you have to like abortion to understand that maybe, just maybe, it's better to keep it legal than to make it illegal.
And I think that's an interesting argument, and one I also have some difficulties with. But I think, there are other arguments also along those lines. I think those arguments are not given enough thought and credulity. The reality is, abortion can be done by anybody at home very dangerously, but it can be done. But if somebody wants to do it, they're going to find a way. And the reality is, if you don't make it available, you can't jail them. We can't turn this into. We don't want to turn this into a Handmaid's Tale where we monitor who's. We can't do that. So the reality is, since a woman will always have the ability to at least attempt it on their own dangerously, you have to consider the fact that even if you agree with every pro-life argument, you have to consider the fact that there is still an autonomy you cannot take away from them. So now what? Yeah.
Well, the one thing that I struggle with and the whole debate is after a pregnancy has occurred, an unwanted pregnancy after a pregnancy has occurred, the woman has the choice whether she wants to be responsible for the resulting child or not. The man has no choice. He will be, if the woman decides to keep it and the man doesn't want it, he's still going to be held financially responsible, regardless of whatever he wants. So the man doesn't have any choice. The woman has all of the choices, and that one I still struggle with.
Well, and it's both ways too, right? I mean, if the man feels like this is his child, and if he learns the sex of the child and he says, "Oh my God, it's a baby girl. I've always wanted a baby girl." I was told I couldn't conceive. And she has an abortion. Now, and please don't misconstrue this argument. This is not an argument for why he should have any choice in the matter. This is an argument for the realization and the fact that he does not. So he does not have a choice either way. None of the choice is his. And there's a practical reality as to why that is. You can't change that reality, and he shouldn't be given a choice in that sense. But you have to realize, too, there was a proposal a while back, and I don't remember all the details, where basically a man could say that he would want to have nothing to do with the child, and he could sort of divorce himself from it. But I forget what the circumstances were. The woman would have to get a certain amount of compensation for that if she decided to have a child, but he could not be legally held responsible past a certain point. And then if he decided he wanted to keep the child and the woman kept the child, he could not, once the child was born, he could not be cut out of the child's life, yada, 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 to have at least some more equity. So please don't take this argument into this other idea that he should have a say in whether or not she can have an abortion. But you have to have the realization that this is the only circumstance I'm aware of where they both were absolutely equal in creating the child, but his entire life hinges on circumstances beyond his control, and she has ostensibly in a country where abortion is legal, easy to get, and those rights are enforced. She has every choice and can make any choice, but that choice isn't just about her life. It's about his too, and he has zero say in the matter.
Just one thing I think should be pointed out here, that no one on this panel can get pregnant, I think.
Well, I know. Did you see Twins? That was a documentary. With Arnold Schwarzenegger? Okay, I'm sorry. Never mind. I'm sorry. I don't want to. I think
we are doing some amazing things with biotechnology. But
I know you're making a serious point, and I shouldn't joke, but please continue.
I find that my view tend to be quite well accepted by a lot of women because it favors them having complete autonomy over their own bodies.
Well, and again, I'm not arguing against that, so I want to be very careful because it could sound like I am, but
I know.
Porpoise. Oh, I want to hear Porpoise. I cut her off with a hilarious joke that everybody laughed at.
And there are only 4 people on this panel that can get someone else pregnant.
How many people are in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And I'm a dad.
That may be true.
Well, that's. I don't know if any of you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please.
I don't know if any of you might suffer from some medical condition that would prevent that, but I'm just.
I do.
All right. Yeah, I
cannot have children.
I have no problem making children.
Yeah, I'm intersex. I don't produce sperm.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So.
Also, So no, I mean, I think that's a fair point. The other discussion I'd actually like to have, and it's a tough one to have, because I heard an argument that I like. You got to be careful with it, but okay. So what happens when? Actually, well, no. You know what? I do want to bring that up. I'm not sure now is the time because it's gonna send us in a completely different direction. But what Sinister brought up that I think is interesting is when you get a whole bunch of, especially the old white guys who are sitting there talking about things that will never trouble them, never affect them, and they have no say in, and that's obviously a really big problem, and it's been happening for a very, very long time. Is it always a problem? Is I think a fair question. I do think that especially people who are more conservative let me rephrase that. The stereotypical sort of old conservative, rich white guy who is sort of starting to express themselves and trying to figure out what society is saying and where they stand on these things. They will get together and hash these things out before they feel in a quote safe space, before they feel more comfortable discussing this with people who it actually does affect. And then usually they'll get their asses handed to them because they got no idea what they're talking about. But it starts with them getting together in their own echo chambers. And while I don't think that's a great idea. I don't see any way around that. So I think you will always have some, of the people who know nothing about a topic and who it won't affect them getting together, shooting the shit about it, and sometimes even being offensive. But that's kind of how they get their feet wet with talking about it. I don't know. Am I just way off base, or does that make any sense?
Well, I think more my point is, like, you should take these opinions with a grain of salt, because
I think with setting public policy, setting public policy and laws that are going to govern the land, of course, all of the people should have a say in that.
I think it's wise to take anything I say with a grain of salt. But that's just
or possibly an entire plant.
So and then we just got this. So I guess Occupy Democrats. Titan sent me this DM, which I appreciate here. Breaking news: New York judge gives the Trump organization an ultimatum: either comply with his subpoena and turn over Donald, Ivanka's, Eric's, and Don Jr.'s emails and texts over to the Attorney General, or a firm will be hired to do it. Which suggests to me what they're saying is hiring a forensic team to go over all of their records. So yeah, I figured drop that in case anyone wants to discuss that.
I don't feel sorry for Trump. He made such a big deal about getting other people's records and refused to release his own. He earned this. He asked for this.
Yeah. Oh, so yeah, no, I'm on. No, listen, I think this should have been done sooner. Quite frankly, I'm glad it's being done. I think there's so much that they've been hiding. I'm curious.
If he left it all alone, people would be okay with him leaving it alone. This being left alone too, but he made such a big deal about getting that for other people's, all for political reasons. It's just dirty politics. So yeah, he earned this.
I don't know that there should be a law saying that their taxes should be public, but I'm not sure that their taxes are irrelevant. And I'm not sure that there shouldn't be at least some organization that takes a look at them. Now, his was already being scrutinized. I think the fact that he wouldn't follow the practice, what was considered the practice at the time of showing them, should tell you something. And I was always blown away that his argument, like, no, I'm going to be a libertarian and show that I don't have to show him. Just trust me, I'm a billionaire. Like, yeah, he's a billionaire. Why should he have to show you his taxes? It's like, holy shit. I would talk about cult-like thinking. I'm sitting there going, no, he clearly doesn't have, and we've established that now. At best, he's got, what, a couple $100 million at best, and that's assuming you don't take into account all these loans that are coming due. So, but yeah, between that and...
Given their position...
I'm sorry, what?
Given their position, it seems only reasonable that they should have their taxes evaluated by somebody. Like, anybody in extreme power over the country should be basically have somebody over their shoulder to make sure they're not abusing their power. It doesn't have to be public, but it should be.
To be fair, we have an organization like that. It's called the IRS. They're privy to everybody's taxes.
I think there's some truth to that, but there's a conflict. There are conflicts of interest that need to be addressed. That usually, that's why Trump should have handed everything over to. For example, Trump should have handed everything over to a blind trust. That should be the law, and your taxes need to be evaluated not by. And it could be by the IRS. Have a separate department, but not for income purposes, not for taxation purposes, but to find out whether or not you have a conflict of interest that either your job will allow you to violate the emoluments clause, which apparently doesn't even matter anymore, or that you're gonna be leveraging something, especially if you're not gonna hand everything over to a blind trust, which you absolutely did not do. I think his taxes are absolutely relevant above and beyond the normal practices of the IRS.
You see,
I agree that you should put your finances. If you're, especially for something like the president, that you should be required to place your assets in a blind trust.
What were you going to say, Jake?
No, I already said it.
Okay. Yeah. So no, I think all his records need to be subpoenaed. The only reason it doesn't matter. He's violated so many laws. and so many. And the amount that he's going to get away with is staggering. But the good news is, I think he's going to get hooked on the biggies. I hope so. Some of the biggies he's already going to get off the hook because the what's it says let him off for that. But I think he's going to get nailed on money laundering. They are very serious about this in New York, and they've got all the biggies there already. So
you figure he's in money laundering? Huh?
Oh, I have zero doubt in my mind. Zero doubt in my mind. He's got a huge number of loans that were unsecured, mostly from Deutsche Bank, which is a well-established money laundering organization, and it has fronted most of its money from the Russians, who clearly fronted the money that Deutsche Bank gave him.
To what extent? How much money do you think he's laundered? If you were to guess.
That's a really good question. I don't know. I believe somebody had him going through a whole bunch of money going through at least one of the properties, the 666 one that he ended up giving to his son, Madison Avenue, and then a couple others. I don't know how much. What I do know is he got a whole bunch of unsecured loans from Deutsche Bank that the money has already been traced. It was suspected anyway, because this is how they do it. It's all been traced to Russian banks, which, since Putin's in charge, it's Putin's money. So, and somebody may have somewhere that figure. If I ever knew the figure, I don't remember what it is. But most of those loans are starting to come due, and he keeps getting these loans at a much higher evaluation for whatever it is that he's trying to do with them. So, presumably, he's going to either skim off the top, or he's only going to repay based on the original valuation, so he gets paid all this money. And then the question is, what's he really getting the money for? Now they're wanting all the money back, and it looks like it's well in excess of what he's actually got. So the question is, what happens when he can't pay it back? The other biggie is now his credit rating in New York has been dropped just by the lenders in New York, because he's lost so much value in, I don't remember if it was his hotel or one of his condominiums, because so many people have moved out and nobody's moving in. It's not making enough money for him that they think they can get paid back. So he's lost, I think it was his credit rating. I think he's lost how much money he can now borrow. Everything he does is borrowing and deficit spending anyway, but I don't.
John Oliver from the Daily Show did an episode on Trump and the number of lawsuits against him back either before he got elected or early on in his career as a president of the country. And they counted like a quarter of the country. They found over 2,500 lawsuits against him.
Yeah,
the majority for unpaid invoices.
Yeah.
Is it really fair?
It was 2,500 or something. Yeah, roughly there. 2008.
Is it really fair to call Trump's presidency a career?
Jeez. It was a very short career. You know, a lot of people these days don't keep their jobs very long, so he's right in line with that.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Temporary career.
He wanted it to be a career. He wanted it to be a lifelong position.
He's very jealous of and Vladimir Putin, how things are going in those two places, Russia and China.
Oh, and he said, and North Korea, and he talked about it all the time. I mean, holy shit! You run this country great. Said that to what, Kim Jong-un? Oh.
He loved authoritarians.
Well, she did. Yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm going to start wrapping it up, folks. It's getting a little late. I'm getting a little tired. This is our third show of the day. I've been streaming for, three. That was cute, but it was really, it's all their hand notes, jokes, making fun of gun control advocates, and then so it was just thousands of documents doing exactly that, and the judge admonished them. But that was the last I remember. I mean, that had to have been like almost 2 months ago.
Yeah, and the Legal Eagle looked into the actual subpoena, and they wanted I like him too. He's really good. They wanted their school records, their attendance records, their report cards, like all this kind of stuff. It wasn't just like we don't know what's in this thing. He actually looked at it and it's like, holy crap, none of this can be in any way relevant.
Well, and it's dangerous because it looks like then they're about to attack the kids. Like, he deserved to get shot by one of our marvelous Remington rifles. which obviously they're not. Well, presumably they're not going to do. But I've heard crazier arguments. That's just. Well, yeah, they're making themselves look bad, but who knows? I mean, the judge admonished them last I saw. It's been a while since I looked at that, but the judge admonished them last I saw. So, okay, if that's the, so what's the next move? I don't know. I mean, right now there's a law in the books that says they can't be actually held accountable for what someone does with their guns anyway. So, I mean, I think there's an end run to get some kind of minor compensation or some kind of remedy, but it's not going to be, you're not going to be able to sue them for any significant amount of money. So I don't know what the end game is.
Yeah,
it sounds more like a fishing expedition for information.
Yeah, it does sound like that.
That sounds about right. All right. Well, yeah. Anything else? Sorry, I don't want. I mean, we don't have to.
Did you say earlier that
harassment in a way too?
That every person who doesn't get the vaccine is eventually down the line will lead to a death?
No, I said if you get it and you pass it on to somebody else, say one or two other people, basically eventually down the line you're going to kill someone, because if each of those two pass it on, or each of those three pass it on to another three, to another three, to another three, to another three, even if the mortality rate is only 0.1%, eventually there will be someone who will die that you could trace back to you. But that's assuming any number of things. A, it's assuming you get it. B, it's assuming you transmit it. And C, I think I actually said 3 or more people. So it's assuming you transmit it to 3 or more people, and each of them transmit it to a couple of others. So even if all 3 are fine and don't even get the sniffles, if each 3 of them transmit it to 3, and so on and so on and so forth, and you get the logarithmic progression, eventually there will be a human being that you could trace to you having killed. But while I agree that this should not in any way result in murder charges or anything like that, because you cannot be responsible for what you're too far. You're no longer the most proximate cause by any stretch of the imagination. You are still a therefore, oh Jesus, I forget what the technical is. But without you, if you had not acted recklessly, knowing full well that if you get several people sick and they get several, you will eventually cause the death of somebody, you still should have some legal consequences, was my argument, because it is reasonable to assume eventually somewhere along the line, yeah, you're going to kill someone.
But I had two issues with that. Is that you can't, if we had perfect knowledge, we could trace it back to a single individual who acted recklessly. But we don't have perfect knowledge. We can't trace it back to that person. With only partial knowledge, if you take the person who died and trace it back to the people they came in contact with, and they came in contact with, and they came in contact with, you have a tree or a bush of people who caused it. So all of these people are partially responsible.
I'm not going that way.
But you also,
please. I'm not going that way causally. I'm going the other way. But please continue. And
right. But I understand you're going that way. But
all
the thing
is
when you trace
it
back, you can't know.
Well, that I agree. That's one of the reasons why I said you cannot hold them responsible for murder, is because, hey, there'd be so many. What I'm saying is you can hold them responsible for something much lesser, either reckless endangerment, malicious mischief, something like that. Because if you get the chances, if you have COVID and you behave normally, and you go out and you interact with people normally, maintain a normal social distance, all these other things, the chances that you will infect several other people are quite high. Because the chances that if they behave the same way, the chances that they infect other people are also quite high, that they will infect other. Ergo, since somewhere along that line, you will probably kill somebody, the chances that your behavior will result in a death far enough along down the line, what you are doing should be criminal. I don't think it should be criminal to the point of, because it is so remote, I don't think it should be criminal to the point where, you can't trace it back. I wouldn't even want to trace it back, because you can't know who is going to die. You don't know who. Maybe the person next to you has a weak immune system, and they're the ones you kill. Well, you didn't know that, but you did know that there was a risk, and that the risk would likely result in significant harm to at least one other human being, if not multiple ones, if it continues. So you should either wear the mask or have some form of criminal responsibility, even if it's a fine, a first offense, $200, $500, second offense, significantly more money, and a week in jail, something like that. Along those lines, I'm going to spin that out. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's what I'm.
Yeah, I can agree that an action should be determined as reckless endangerment of some kind. And I don't know, it depends on the action, because you can trace back like a case to something like the Sturgis motorcycle rally. Like you can trace it back to a group of people, but never an individual. So I would agree that saying this motorcycle rally is reckless endangerment. But you're going to have a lot of people who they get sick and then they transfer it to 3 people. And then these 3 people, everybody they come in contact with got COVID from some other source. So they didn't necessarily transmit it to other people. So.
Yeah. I'm just saying, because it's reasonable to say that if you get COVID and you pass it on, that on a long enough time scale, that will result in somebody's death. Now, there are so many more steps. You can't sit there. But no, it's reasonable to say that it's a strong possibility. If you have it and you behave normally, you engage with other people normally, you're going to infect several people. If they infect several people, it's going to very likely result in somebody's death. So, but because the causal chain is so long, I would not advocate for anything remotely close to murder. But because you're aware...
Well, not only that, but...
yes, please.
But you being able to prove, specific culpability to somebody is going to be nearly impossible to prove in a court of law.
Exactly. So I would never argue, nor should you, because again, there would be 300 other therefores. So there'd be, if any one of those people had also worn masks, if any one of all those people would have to be violating the rules too, really, for this to work. The assumption is that everybody's doing this behavior. So what I'm suggesting is criminalizing the behavior, because for a fact it's, I can't say for a fact, so the likelihood is very high that if you get COVID and you behave normally, you will cause harm, and on a long enough time scale, probably significant harm. So you have, and again, it's not, like I said, a couple $100 fine for the first offense, and no jail time, no nothing. It's just like, you didn't wear a mask. I think what Nancy Pelosi did was great. It's like, it's $100 every time you come in here without a mask on. And by the way, you can't pay from your you can't pay from money that you get from. It comes right out of your salary. That's it. She took it right out of her salary so that they wouldn't pay from campaign donations.
Garnishing.
Yeah, she garnished it. So, and then I was just like, okay, there you go. There's somebody who's saying we're acknowledging that this is a serious. So, and I don't know if 100's enough or too much, or, I liked it. I thought it was great. Now, those guys make so much money, it probably doesn't mean much, except she could hit them with it every day. Now, for the average Joe, you hit them with $100 and say, next time, just wear the mask. That's it. We're not asking you to do anything else. We're saying wear a mask. You have to wear clothing. You have to wear pants at a McDonald's, and you can get fined if you don't do that. Wear a mask or you're going to get a $100 fine. You're committing a criminal act. Why? Because we know that if enough people do it, even with one, the likelihood is pretty high that if they're doing it, you're going to get people sick. And eventually, somebody's going to get sick enough to kill them. So just wear the mask. And if you don't, $100. If you keep violating it, then maybe 7 days in jail. But I hadn't worked it out that far.
I definitely do like the idea of if you're not wearing a mask, that's a potential fine, and if you're wearing a chin diaper, that also counts as part of the fine. And putting it on actions like that would be the only reasonable way to do it. It was definitely like a semantic issue with the way you phrased it that I had.
Yeah, I think I went that way just because I wanted to be able to justify the fact that you have a reasonable expectation that you could cause serious harm, and it's because of the infectious nature of this. The likelihood is very good that the people that you infect, you're not going to kill, because the death rate is so low. So, but you have to realize they're going to infect other people, and they're going to. So, because of the danger, and eventually, along somewhere down the line, if you infect 3 people, the chances that eventually one of them is going to infect someone who kills someone is reasonably high. So, we have to acknowledge the fact that yes, this is dangerous, and it's actually very dangerous on a long enough time scale. So, it's a mask or a fine, and because we can't trace it, because you're not deliberately going out and killing people, we shouldn't be putting anyone in jail, and just saying, oh, you're a murderer. No. But we cannot ignore the fact that you should by now know what the consequences are, especially long term. And they compound, and they compound quickly. Wear a mask, problem solved. And if you don't, it should be criminal. And again, not to the point of $100 a day. Even $100 is certainly at the first violation. I'm sold on that. That's fine with me. All right. Anybody else as we wrap this up? Yes.
I'm going to say I'm nodding off, and I don't want to fall asleep on your stream. So I'm probably going to go to sleep.
It wouldn't be the first one. It's just like, well, my wife doesn't. She just falls out sitting there going, so what do you think? You wouldn't believe what I just noted. Poof. And then all of a sudden, she's asleep. And says, oh, yeah, on brilliant deduction. I was like, yeah, I know, right? Smart. Wait, were you snoring? No, that's the way I say good job.
I'm sorry, what?
Never mind. All right. You
guys woke me up.
Oh, you son of a! This is why. He's a fucking smartass. This is what I said. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time or first time meeting, fucking smartass. He's smart too. See, he's smart and he's a real fucking ass. So you put smartass. All right. Let's start out. Jake, anything you wanted to say before we bail? I channel anywhere you wanted to direct anyone, tell anyone about what you do.
Yeah, I do the Jake 4D channel for religion and philosophy. I've got 2 videos that I'm just trying to get over a little hump, and then I'll get those posted. And Jake 3D for games and stuff. I'm actually going to be on Jake 3D on Twitch after this, playing Icarus, a new game. So if you want to hang out, yeah.
And if you want to get that, if you should be able to drop the link in the live chat. If you can't, you want to get it to me or Titan, and we'll drop it for you. All right, perfect. Also, just Jake's been around for a very long time, big supporter of the show, which I really appreciate. So thank you. Good to see you, Jake, as always. Randolph. He's asleep.
I'm not asleep.
Yeah, okay. Randolph, who are you? Where can people find you? What debates have you been in where you learned that people don't call people a clown?
I haven't really been in any debates lately. I did talk with Darth Dawkins when he was being shown on in his Discord just the other night when Skylar was watching the channel and conversing. I got a chance to chat with him for a little bit, but we both ran out of time, so it didn't go very far. He got quite frustrated with me a while ago, and so it's kind of fun chatting with him once in a while because he gets into his tirades. But I'm hoping to get some debate activity going again soon in the near future. But where people can find me, I do publish these debates that I've been in on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Randolph Richardson, and Randolph is spelled Randolf. Spell check disagrees with me, but I know how my name's spelled.
Well,
hey, we share that issue because every time I spell my last name, spell check tells me I'm wrong.
Yeah, there you go. I know exactly how you feel then, and likewise. I also started an organization in 2014 here called Canadian Atheists. We're a national atheism organization that advocates for the atheism demographic here, and we push back against the vilification of atheists and the stigmatization of atheism, because we believe that it's normal to not believe things, including not believing in deities. So if you want to find out more about this organization, the website address is www.canadianatheists.ca. Thank you to everybody in the audience who's tuned in today. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you, Nick, for hosting this. It's been a pleasure talking with everybody here today. Thank you, all of you.
Oh, this was great. I was really glad. I think we got to hit a lot of great topics, and this was a good one. Thank you all for coming. I think it's always great when we have a lot of everybody. This was a so thank you guys so much for coming. Sinister.
I am the Sinister Porpoise. When you think of sinister porpoises, think of the Sinister Porpoise. And yes, I stole that from Third Rock from the Sun. I'm actually doing something, experimenting a little bit, but right now it's like I'm doing Saturday nights, I'm doing like a Scratch tutorial where I'm going through a book and trying to teach myself Scratch. So if you want to join me, I'll probably do it tomorrow night at 7.
And I'm gonna say that's Randolph on the keyboard, just because even though it looks like porpoise, you never go wrong blaming Randolph.
I type fast. Sorry, it's a bit noisy.
No,
we both have mechanical keyboards.
All right, was there something else you were going to say, porpoise, or was that? Did you wrap that up, or?
Oh yeah. Be excellent to each other, and so long, and thanks for all the fish.
That's such a nice message.
That is a nice message. Yeah.
I know there's a Sinister Porpoise. Is there a Dexter Porpoise? I'm referring to her. I guess that I'm sorry. That's too subtle.
I got it.
Yeah. Went over my head.
I figured you would.
Sinister got it. All right, Isandering. I keep adding that extra E. I can't help myself. Isandering. Yeah.
Yes, you love putting E's in my name. You can't follow me, and I don't post anything. So there, take that.
That was easy.
That's not true. You did post one of that. I think that stretch of road, and then it was snowing a little bit. And then if you want to see what it's like to drive all the way across the country, just from the perspective of the truck, he's got a video or two on that. Unless you took him down.
Oh yeah, I guess I did. I did upload things just to see how it worked.
Yeah,
they're storm videos.
Yeah, I care. That's yeah.
There are some successful Twitch channels that are literally just a truck camera, dash camera.
I was telling you,
I saw somebody who was over in Europe somewhere. Yeah, I saw somebody over in Europe that was on Twitch that was doing that. Only he somehow had his tablet up by his dash or something, was actually reading comments and was talking to people. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't look very safe.
Pretty sure that's illegal. But
don't do that.
Well, I mean, it was over in Europe.
I don't care. Don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't do that.
There are a lot of U.S. based ones too.
All right. Well, I'm gonna wrap it.
It'd be eminently boring. I mean,
there are people who would want to see it. There are people who would want to see it. I would probably check in on it every now and then, to be quite honest with you. I have no idea why. I don't know what the appeal is. Maybe if I was a hamster.
Okay, so look at Tuesdays. So look at Tuesdays. You can listen to at least somewhat half intelligent. Because I mean, I'm there, so you have to discount half of it for the intelligence quotient. But I had my camera turned so you could actually see what I was looking at.
Tuesday, join us Tuesdays on In Time. In fact, next Tuesday we've got Dr. Oh dear Lord, I'm tired. Dr. Conspiracy, who does conspiracy theories. He's a PhD in philosophy, but he studied conspiracy theories, and it's insane. He knows every conspiracy in the U.S., but he also studied them abroad, so he knows like French conspiracy theories, and he rattled off some of them, but he talks about why we find them so appealing, what it takes to believe one, we're going to have him on. He is a delight. So that's going to be on Tuesday, and while we're doing that, you will see in his Andering's window the road that he's driving on.
Yeah, if I'm still driving at that time. I'm usually stopped, but like last Tuesday, I wasn't. I was about 30 miles, so first half hour of the show is just me driving down the road.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. And yep, that's Tuesday schedule, overtime on Wednesday, and we will catch up with you all tomorrow. Thank you, or not tomorrow. Wow, Tuesday. Thanks again so much, everybody who came. Sorry, Brendan, that we didn't. Yeah, but we'll be back next Friday. So come join us again for that. See you later.